All right, good evening. We're going to call the Hermiston City Council work session to order. This evening, we're here to discuss naming rights for city facilities. Mr. Smith, are you taking this one?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So I apologize. There was a last minute change to the draft that we're looking at. I sent it out over the weekend. It's also should have a copy up there on the dais. That's the one we'll be talking about. There wasn't a lot of changes. There was more clarification, trying to make sure it applied to all city facilities and not strictly Parks and Rec facilities, even though that would probably be the majority of things we'd be talking about, but just making sure it could be used in other ways as well. So tonight we're gonna just kind of talk briefly about the history, then we're gonna go through the draft policy in a little bit of detail. And then we have a potential action item if the council would like to. If not, we can move that to a future meeting as well if there's some additional questions. So why are we talking about naming rights? Well, first, this started, I didn't realize it started so far back, but the first one that people call out is in 1912, Fenway Park in Boston was named after a business there locally. And so we've been talking about this on some level for a long time in the United States. But it really is a relatively new trend or an option for cities specifically to be looking at it from a revenue standpoint. Otherwise, I think cities been naming parks or whatever after prominent citizens or buildings after those and for quite a while. So, but at this point, it can now be a form of advertising and memorialization for somebody who's done something significant or something like that. So from Hermiston's standpoint, we started talking about this a couple of years ago. Mostly it was, I think, in relationship to EOTech as we looked at taking over ownership, and we'd talked, I think since the start of EOTech, there had been talk of trying to name some of the facilities there and have it be a source of revenue for the facility. So this really got brought to the forefront of our discussion because as the Heroes group is working on trying to finalize their project, they had a donor approach them who would be willing to give them enough money to finish all the lighting, which is basically all that's left. And so they came to me and said, hey, is there any way we can get this talked about? And so I've tried to move it as quickly as possible, but still have a thoughtful discussion about it with the council before we brought a specific proposal before you. Mr. Mayor.
Councilor McCarthy, you got a question already?
Yes, just I want to make sure I understood because I may have missed you saying it. The donor that came to them wanted to be able to name at least some part of Heroes after them.
Right. So this would be a very significant, potentially close to $1 million. I'm not sure where they're at on the rest of their fundraising, but about $1 million to complete the lighting and on that facility. So then all the fields would be lit and be able to be used much longer hours and so forth. So as I was talking about earlier, the first draft, some of the drafts we looked at are really started with a focus on parks and recreation facilities, but I really wanted to broaden it so that we could use it for all types of facilities. There's been some discussion about, as we are doing a renovation of the library, that maybe there could be maybe some of the rooms or some artwork or something like that could also be sponsored or named. And so we want to make sure we could use it for a variety of uses. Klamath Falls is the one we used most to pattern this policy after, but we looked at many policies from around the country, various cities doing different things. Another piece of feedback I got early on was to make sure that this also could be used to rename a facility. So once it's named, it's not named forever. So I tried to make sure that was clear and the process that would be followed. So what's in the policy, or what are the things that would be affected by it? And again, it's pretty flexible. There's some language that could include, this is just, at least it includes these kinds of facilities, buildings, rooms in buildings, parks, garden areas, playgrounds, sports fields, courts, picnic areas, paths or trails, restrooms, swimming pools, all of those could possibly be covered by that. What's out? What would not be a facility under this? So again, this is somewhat flexible, but typically not natural features or landscaping elements, specific trees or lawns, natural bodies of water, undeveloped land, general open space areas, or small non-structural amenities. So benches, signage, garbage cans, minor decorative elements. Now we've in the past, the Parks Department has sold benches with names on it, but that wouldn't be anything that we're going to call out on a map, and they were just paying for the cost of that bench. And so at the cost level is also a kind of a way that we are not including it in this particular policy. So here's a kind of a summary of the objectives in there. It's a way to identify the facility, the area, give a great geographic location. So maybe that helps people find something within a larger park or a larger facility. Want to recognize individuals or organizations that develop those for public use. Honor a person for historical or commemorative reasons, and provide for added or enhanced development through the purchase of naming rights. Where someone gives additional funds, we can do more development in a specific area. So the process that we're proposing is either a staff member or community member would propose a name or a new name for a facility, and the appropriate city committee with jurisdiction would follow the guidelines that come a little bit in the next subparagraph. So this could be the Parks and Rec Committee, it could be the library board, it could be whatever department in the city might be in charge of that facility. They would take a look at it, make a recommendation, and then the city council would approve a name or any naming rights agreement that might go with it if there's that included. So the guidelines, considerations, be creative, use the names of places around it or the streets, the schools, historic sites or events, geographic features, those types of things to be a consideration. And then we get in a little more detail with if you want to start looking at names of people to be included in that. So as you can see, if it's a living person, proposing at least 50% of the value of the land or facility is donated, or when all of it, when public individuals have made a significant contribution over a long period of time, or they have a special interest in that park or facility, or when they played an essential role in the development or the evolution of that facility or area. And then for a deceased person, when it's appropriate to name them, it could be somebody who's made a major contribution to the community or done something of note, or they could be the person instrumental in acquiring or developing the park or facility. What we propose is that person would need to be deceased for at least 6 months prior to having that consideration. Then organizations, again, 50% of the value, a significant contribution to the development. And then continuing the commercial naming rights. Now, this is where someone approaches us, wants their company name or something like that on the facility, and they're willing to provide a certain amount of funding for that. But none of those could be related to alcohol, tobacco, or other businesses that don't reflect the values of our community. And then there would be a length of those rights that would be determined through a negotiated agreement, again, that would be approved by the council. And then just another consideration, we don't want to duplicate names with others in the area or in the state that are of note. And then, you know, just because someone made a proposal doesn't mean the city has to act on it. And so that's kind of a quick summary, and be happy to answer questions or have any discussion.
Counselors, yes, Counselor Linton.
If you can go back on your slide,
Mhm.
please. I have a couple of questions.
Can you pull your microphone a little closer?
Oh,
Pull a little closer.
okay.
We want to hear you.
My food in the way. Okay.
What page would you like to go back
Yeah,
to?
yeah, right here.
Right here? Okay.
Yes, I was looking at with the deceased people, I just wanted to make sure I had that part straight, that it has to be someone that lived here in Hermiston and maybe passed, or can it be, say, for instance, God forbid, somebody decided, I want to name this park, I'm gonna pay for the whole thing, but I want to name it after Adolf Hitler, to go far-fetched out there, if you get my drift. Would they be able to do something like that?
So as it's currently before you, it doesn't limit it to somebody who was from Hermiston. It could be somebody else. Again, it would, you know, there's some other parts of the policy that would protect against, you know, the extreme, that somebody that doesn't align with the values of our community, some of those types of things.
Okay,
So, but you know, if someone wanted to name it after a general, you know, the one that comes to mind from the Gulf War, Norm Schwarzkopf, you know, that wouldn't be prohibited specifically by this policy.
okay. What about religious groups? Say, I don't want to mention any particular religion, but I'm thinking of one overseas, but I don't want to say the name.
Yeah,
It offends a lot of people. So,
yeah, again, it would only be, I mean, that part in there about the values of the community, if it doesn't agree with those, then that would be something that,
Council always has the right
that's right,
to approve or disapprove names.
right.
okay, and
Go ahead, finish.
let me see, the next slide with the commercial,
Uh-huh.
it says that you want to negotiate. I would like to see that instead of it being negotiated, that it would be at least 50% or better, that they would have to donate if it's a commercial company. That's just what I'm,
And
wondering.
that is something that was in one of the paragraphs above, that would need to be 50% of the value or more. We could clarify that, but it was in a part earlier on in the policy.
I think the challenge you run into with that, there may be facilities that are significant investments, like $40 million facility, and somebody wants to make $1 million contribution. Is that substantial enough that you would offer them some sort of naming right opportunity? So I don't know that we want to tie a specific percentage to tie the council's hands, because we'd probably find a way to put a name somewhere for $1 million towards that facility. And I think the same thing is happening at EOTech with the Heroes Project, right? So they are probably not contributing 50%, but $1 million would be pretty significant. Counselor, you had a question?
Yeah, so in your deal here a little bit ago towards the beginning, you talked about additionally small non-structural amenities like park benches, signage, waste receptacles, and minor decorative elements are not considered facilities. But yet like you yourself mentioned, park benches are named. One that I know of personally is because the disc golf course,
Mm-hmm.
if you donated, you literally purchased the naming rights essentially for that
For the whole.
for that particular hole. So
Mhm.
I think that, we may have to, our policy may have to address something along those lines to where it's that something like that it can be handled at a lower level.
And that's what this is trying to say. This is not in our policy, those types of things. But it doesn't get specific about, kind of what dollar amount.
Right, but my understanding, or, just from looking at the way that this is written, it would not allow for that to take place moving forward, the way
Well-
this is written.
No, it would, it just wouldn't have to go, it wouldn't be required to go through this process. And if
Okay.
we need to
Well,
be
like-
more clear with that,
Yeah, I
I'm
think I think some more
that, but-
clarity on that respect because, you know, just on the overview of this and, you know, I don't consider myself to be a genius when it comes to that kind of stuff. So looking at this kind of thing from the general point of view, it would sound like this is saying it can't be done. So just a little more clarification, I think would be
Okay.
in order for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had some struggles with that as well because we have sponsored items before structures within parks. And the other one was the lakes, rivers and ponds. You know, we've discussed potentially a future pond development. And if somebody came in and wanted to name it Baker's Pond, you know, would we put Baker's Pond on it, you know, or is it going to just be Hermiston's Pond, you know?
Mhm.
So could you know, name that structure as well? Counselor?
I have a question on naming. Okay, so if it was named that for whatever reason, there was a reason. So then how would you determine that the reason was good enough to rename it?
I think, you know, just like Seahawks Stadium, right? They change the name on that stadium, I don't know, every 10 years or whatever, their contract is negotiated for.
Due to money, yeah.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
I think what you're suggesting in here is you put a timeline on how long that name is good
Right.
for, or the council could determine that?
Yeah. Or, I mean, I could see like, you know, we recently went through a process and renamed Greenwood Park. And so if someone wanted to come in and say, we want to rename it to whatever park, it would, it would have to go through this process and it have to be, the case would have to be made as to the reason why we would rename it that.
Okay.
And it would have to be, you know, we would be able to go back and, well, this is why it was renamed. We can find the kind of the history of that. I use that one because it's a one I know we could find the history on. Some of the other parks, it'd be a little harder, but that type of a situation where you'd have to say why this name's better than what it used to be.
Mhm.
And then the council would have to agree. The committee first and then the council.
Because particularly with the parks, you know, there's some of them that I know why Belt Park is named Belt Park, but, you know, most people don't. But then you would have to come up with some kind of history and I don't really know, you know, how you would provide that.
That's a good point. Do we have a historical record of the names on our facilities?
I probably not on all of them, but I would guess we could, we searched, we could find potentially council action as to when it took place and that type of thing. But
That's why you got to stay on council.
You know, that might not be a bad idea, is to, you know, like a little, at every one of our parks to be a little plaque as to when, who, what, why, where, when it was named.
Mhm.
Historical reference.
Yeah, just, you know, if for no other reason, is a historical reference of it.
Well, most of them were just basically family names.
Mhm.
But
know. The families owned the property
And they donated it.
either close by or, you know, were an integral part in getting something going. And that's how the parks ended up with the names that they did.
Yes, ma'am.
I was gonna say that's a good point that Jack just made about the families of like Belt Park, and that's why it's named after them. So can we allow those parks names to stay the same without being involved in any of this to change it? Since it was, in this particular case with Belt Park, I'm speaking of that, where someone has donated the land and. or
Well, I mean-
something.
I don't know that they donated the
Well,
land. I'm
okay.
just saying they lived there, you know.
Well,
or
it
by
would just, it would go through the process, right? The committee and then the council would consider whether that was, whatever the case was being made to rename it, that was it better than having it stay the same? Or, you know, if you think of it as a more of a commercial naming rights opportunity, it could still be, you know, Goodyear Belt Park or whatever, you know, the company name is. Could be inserted at the beginning of it, or Butte Park or whatever.
Counselor McCarthy?
A couple of questions. going back to the renaming question, I'm just curious if there's any protections. I didn't notice any. That would be like, okay, so yes, thank you. I don't know, Budweiser, for your generous donation of $5 million. We'll name the park after you. And then it's been named, and then a handful of people are like, you know what? We don't like it, and we're just gonna submit a name request, and we're just gonna change it after everything is cleared. Is there any sort of protection for those people who would have made donations for at least a minimum guarantee or?
Well, that's why when it's tied to some money or some contribution, there would be some length of time that would be in an agreement with that company.
Especially from a commercial advertising standpoint, they're
Right.
gonna want some sort of guarantee of time. Yeah.
And that would be part of their donation.
Yeah, there would be a naming rights agreement of some sort.
Perfect. And then the second thing
Your
is,
example was inaccurate, though.
Because we
wouldn't-
couldn't name it
the Budweiser.
according to
But no,
According to this
policy.
yeah, I
policy,
was just trying to pick a name that wasn't, yeah,
controversial.
yeah, that wasn't here already. Yeah.
Coca-Cola.
The other thing also is in reference to the Heroes Project, do the parameters set out by the way you've worded this, would that allow for what the sponsor is asking for to exist?
I believe so. I don't have a lot of details of what they've asked, but in my conversations with the Heroes Committee, this policy would fit with that.
Okay, thank you.
I think we're just trying to establish a pathway to have the
Right.
conversation about.
Right, then a specific request could be made and we could go through the process.
Others.
Creating a process to create a process.
Creating a process to create a pathway to have the conversation around. So the one question I had around organizational donations, it's a little ambiguous when you look at A and C, so 3A and 3C. When 50% of the value of the parkland facility or area is donated, or when the donation has been deemed significant in the development of a facility or area. So do we need both of those in there, or can deemed significant be enough?
Well, I think it gets to the situation that you were describing earlier, where if it's a $40 million project and somebody makes $1 million donation, we could deem that significant. Maybe not to name the whole thing or whatever, but give some recognition based on that being a significant contribution.
So if somebody came in, for instance, and wanted to rename EOTech, Allegiant Center.
Yeah.
They would have to give 50% of the value or the investment that the community has made. If they want to only name parts of the center, like the beef barn
Or the event center
or the event center, yeah, then they could come up with a significant contribution. It wouldn't have to necessarily be 50%.
No.
Okay.
And, part of that deeming it significant could be an evaluation of naming rights. We actually have seen one that was produced for EOTech at one point. And so, there's not a lot of companies that do it, but there are people out there that give you a value of that based on how many people come through and those types of things.
The other concern I had about this process is we're not putting a for sale sign out, right? We're not going out saying, hey, Hermiston's for sale,
No.
right? So this is if people come to us and they want to recognize a person or a business in a significant way with some significant funds, then we've got a process.
Right.
Okay, so it's not going to be something we're going to be advertising on our website. Hey, buy this room,
No.
cool, or
No, but I mean, as we, do some, a major renovation project in a building, we could use that as a way to go get some funding.
okay. Okay. Other questions? All right, so tonight during our city council meeting, we will have an option for the council to vote on approval of this.
Yes, I have a potential action, just as trying not to hold up, the Heroes Committee as they try to complete their project, but also want to be respectful of your interests in having a thoughtful process.
Okay, so that's item 14B.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the council?
Yeah, now I do.
Okay.
So, we've talked about making some possible changes or making this a little bit more clear or clarifying. By just having this conversation tonight, and now we're gonna try and approve that tonight, I don't
Well-
see how that works.
Well, I didn't know whether you were gonna have any, so I put it as a possible action. I wasn't asked, I recognize that there could be some changes, some suggestions. We can potentially work on some possible language that we could bring forward at that time. If that's not acceptable, then we would move it to the next council meeting.
Yeah, one of the options you have tonight is make minor adjustments to the policy and approve as amended. So, I mean, if the recommendations come from the dais, and then we could make a motion that way. And if that's not enough, we'll send it back for more work. So
Right.
we'll find out what the council wants to do. Any other questions? All right, anything else, Mr. Smith?
Well, I wasn't sure how long that was gonna last. I thought it would last a little longer, but so I didn't have anything else for the
Okay.
work session.
Well, then we will adjourn the work session for the city council meeting for March 25th, 2024, and restart our regular city council meeting at 7 PM.
Put on the flag right here.
I don't know. Might know somebody.
Well, Roy, there you are. Hey,
Nice.
I am.
We were wondering. There's some food out there, is what she said, in Spanish.
Huh?
All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. We have something a little bit unique going on tonight. So we have a special meeting before our regular city meeting that we're going to talk about or we're going to have a public hearing, right?
Correct.
So we have a 2024 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon we need to discuss this evening. And so we're going to do that first, and then we will get to our regular city council meeting in a couple minutes. Are there any conflicts of interest from the council on the CBDG grant? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Smith, can you present the hearing guidelines, please?
The City Council is holding a public hearing for the 2024 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon. City Council will take public testimony on this issue and make a decision at this meeting. The hearing process will begin with a staff report followed by public testimony. The council requests that all people wishing to testify give their name and mailing address before testifying. People wishing to testify should limit testimony to not more than 5 minutes unless a longer period is provided by the council. Written testimony will be accepted. After everyone wishing to testify has had an opportunity to speak, the City Council will close the public hearing and enter deliberations. Once the public hearing is closed, no further testimony will be received. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We are now going to open this hearing, and the city staff will now present the report.
Okay, part of what we're going to need to do is read the public notice that was published both in English and Spanish. And so we'll do that first, and then I'll walk the council through the project that we're doing this for. City of Hermiston is eligible to apply for a 2024 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon. Community Development Block Grant funds come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The grants can be used for public facilities and housing improvements, primarily for persons with low and moderate incomes. Approximately $12 million will be awarded to Oregon non-metropolitan cities and counties in 2024. The maximum grant that a city or county can receive is $1,500,000. The City of Hermiston is preparing an application for a 2024 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon for the construction of a building addition at Agape House, 500 West Harper Road, Hermiston, which will increase their furniture, clothing, and food store capacity, items distributed to low-income individuals and families in the City of Hermiston and surrounding areas. It is estimated that the proposed project will benefit at least 3,500 persons monthly, of whom 100% will be low or moderate income. A public hearing, did I read the right? Public hearing will be held by the Hermiston City Council at 7 p.m. on March 25th, 2024 at 180 Northeast 2nd Street, Hermiston, Oregon. The purpose of this hearing is for the City Council to obtain citizen views and to respond to questions and comments about community development and housing needs, especially the needs of low and moderate income persons, as well as other needs in the community that might be assisted with the Community Development Block Grant project and the proposed project. Written comments are also welcome and must be received by March 25th, 2024 at 180 Northeast 2nd Street. Both oral and written comments will be considered by the council in deciding whether to apply. The location of the hearing is accessible to persons with disabilities. Please contact the city manager's office at 541-567-5521 if you'll need any special accommodations. More information about the Community Development Block Grant Program, the proposed project, and records about the City of Hermiston's past use of Community Development Block Grants funds is available for public review at 180 Northeast 2nd Street, Hermiston, Oregon during regular business hours. Advance notice is requested. If special accommodations are needed, please notify the city manager's office. Permanent involuntary displacement of persons or businesses is not anticipated as a result of the proposed project. If displacement becomes necessary, Alternatives will be examined to minimize the displacement and provide required/reasonable benefits to those displaced. Any low and moderate income housing that is demolished or converted to another use will be replaced.
La ciudad de Hermiston está elegible para aplicar para un subsidio en 2024 del comunitario Community Development Block Grant, bloque subsidiario para el desarrollo comunitario, que viene de Business Oregon, Negocio Oregon. Los subsidios del bloque subsidiario para el desarrollo comunitario viene desde el U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Departamento de Vivienda de Desarrollo Urbano de los Estados Unidos. Los subsidios pueden ser usados para instalaciones públicas o remodelaciones de casas primariamente por personas con ingresos medianos o bajos. Aproximadamente 12 millones de dólares serán aducido en 2024 a ciudades y condados que no son metropolitanos de Oregon. El máximo subsidio de la ciudad o el condado puede recibir es $1,500,000. La ciudad de Hermiston está preparando una aplicación de 2024 para el subsidio del bloque subsidiario de parte del Desarrollo Comunitario de Vivienda Negocios, Oregon, para la construcción de un edificio en Agape House, 500 West Harper Road, calle Hermiston, Oregon 97838, que aumenta la capacidad de guardar muebles, ropa, alimentos y artículos que dan a personas y familias de bajos ingresos en la ciudad de Hermiston y área alrededor. Está estimado que el proyecto propuesto beneficiará por lo menos 3,500 personas mensuales, de los cuales 100% serán ingresos de medianos o bajos. Una audiencia pública se llevará a cabo en el Concilio de la Ciudad a las 7 p.m. en el 25 de marzo 2024 en 180 Norte Este Calle Segundo, Hermiston, Oregon 97838. El propósito de esta audiencia es para que el Concilio de la Ciudad obtenga puntos de vista de los ciudadanos y para responder a preguntas acerca de desarrollo comunitario y necesidades de vivienda, especialmente las necesidades de personas con ingresos medianos y bajos y otras necesidades en la comunidad que pueden ser asistidas con un subsidio del proyecto bloque subsidiario para el desarrollo comunitario de el proyecto propuesto. Los comentarios escritos son también bienvenidos y deben de ser recibidos para el 25 de marzo en el 180 Norte Este Calle Segundo, Hermiston, Oregon 97838. Comentarios escritos y orales serán considerados para el Concilio de Ciudad en decidir si aplican. Las localizaciones de la audiencia es aceptable para personas incapacitadas. Por favor, llamen con Byron Smith en 541-567-5521 si necesitas cualquier tipo de acomodaciones especiales para asistir o participar en la Junta. Más información sobre el bloque subsidiario para el desarrollo comunitario, el proyecto propuesto y los pasados registros saben sobre la ciudad de Hermiston está uso en el subsidio del bloque subsidiario para el desarrollo comunitario están disponibles para la revisión pública en 180 Norte Este Calle Segundo, Hermiston, Oregon 97838 durante las horas regulares. Se solicita notificación prueba si necesitas adaptaciones especiales. Notifica a Byron Smith, administrador de la ciudad, a 541-567-5521 para que se pueda proporcionar estas asistencia adecuada. No esperamos, anticipamos de desplazamiento involuntario permanente de personas o empresas como resultado del proyecto propuesto. Si desplazamiento se vuelve necesario, se examinará alternativas para minimizar el desplazamiento y proporcionar los beneficios requeridos y razonables a los desplazados. Cualquier vivienda para personas de ingresos bajos y medianos que se demolida o convierta a otro uso será reemplazada.
Okay, so as we mentioned, in that was the public notice that was published more than 10 days ago. This is a CDBG grant that would help the Agape House build some additional storage space. And all of those, all CDBG grants must be sponsored by a government agency. And so they approached us. We're willing to assist them in the kind of the the money side and keeping track of the grant requirements. And so the reason we're having a special meeting is we needed, because of the deadline of the grant, when we got everything started, we need to have the minutes of this special meeting, which are on your agenda to approve in your regular meeting. We'll finish up those. Any changes, those will be emailed to you. You can review those prior to that portion of the regular meeting's agenda. With that, be open to any comments from the public.
Okay. So we'll now take. Sorry. So now we'll take public testimony. So people wishing to speak are asked to come up to the microphone up front, state their name and mailing address, limit your testimony to less than 5 minutes, and we'll start with proponents first. Anybody here like to speak to this grant? Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Mark Gomolsky, 2020 Northwest Eucalyptus Drive, Hermiston, Oregon. I'm also the Executive Director of the Agape House and Eastern Oregon Mission. This grant would help us out tremendously with, if you've been to the Agape House in the last couple of years, you know that we have run out of space. We are now serving over 3,200 people every month, over 980 families. We are servicing between 250 to 275 homeless people every month. And we are just running out of space with to keep all the food together. We get stuff from Capco and from the local business people here, but we also get, a lot of stuff from the farmers that are in the neighborhood, and we just have run out of space. We just have needed to expand, and this is a great opportunity working with you guys in the city to get this grant and to move forward and build these new buildings on the sites that were already there, so you won't have to go to another facility. And it is just a fantastic opportunity that probably will never happen again in our lifetimes. So I would really appreciate all your support to make this happen. And like Byron had said, it is a time crunch. They are looking to possibly start as early as July 15th of this year and complete before December is what the goal is. We are also, one will be a storage unit for extra space for us. And another side of it will also be a new 4-car garage for all the new vehicles that we purchased a year ago on another grant from the same people. And they love the idea that we are investing with this other grant to take care of those cars and trucks so that we can have service for many, many years to come. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mark. How about others, proponents? Okay. A neutral party? Yeah, come on up.
My name is Karen Jones. I live at 1010 West Highland Avenue in Hermiston, and I really hope that you'll support this. This is certainly a really worthy cause. A close family friend was the founder of the Agape House, Kathleen Knudsen, and so I remember hearing about it from the time Kathleen envisioned this when I was a child, and it's been a true asset to the community. And I hope that you'll really embrace it and support this and move forward with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Any other proponents? Any others? Any neutral parties? Any opponents? Okay. We are going to close the hearing. Is there any further council discussion? What are we talking about grant size? Mr. Smith?
We'll be applying for the max, the 1.5 million.
Okay, perfect. Other questions from the council? Yes, Councilor McCarthy.
I've lost the file where we just talked about where this would serve. Is this bringing the capacity up to, I think you said 3,500, or is it an additional?
No, it's bringing it up to that
Okay.
number.
Thank you.
Other council questions, comments? So as far as further action, what do we need to do?
We need to close the hearing and then
Are Already closed the hearing.
Okay,
didn't we? Yep.
yeah, then at our regular meeting in a few minutes, we need a few extra minutes in between so that we can prepare those minutes. And then they'll be ready for you to review and approve on your consent agenda.
Okay. Any other questions about this, council? Okay, so it's 7:14. So 7:20 is what we stated. So 7:20 is still a good time?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we will close the works or the special meeting for now. And we will re-adjourn the regular meeting at 7:20. Feel free to speak amongst yourselves. Meeting to order. That's the problem when you let the things get out of control, then everybody just like goes crazy. So we're going to get this thing back to order. Sorry for the short delay. We're going to call the regular city meeting to order with a declaration of a quorum, all members present. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, it's good to see a nice, healthy crowd this evening. You guys must have heard Dennis Barnett's coming to present the audit report. Mr. Smith, any changes to the agenda this evening?
Not unless you want
Yes,
to.
I would like to ask the council's approval to move 14A up in front of 13A. Be okay with that? Yes? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're going to move 14A up in front of 13A. We'll do 13A after. Okay. So first item on our agenda though this evening is the audit report. So Mr. Barnett, I'm guessing that's why you're here, is to present the audit report. Welcome. Everywhere you go, you bring a crowd.
What can
Welcome.
I say, right?
Right.
You want the long version or the?
We have the long version in front of
We
us.
can go page by page.
I don't know, he could read all 165 pages of it.
Yeah, I don't even, I think there's maybe even a little more, but. Well, thank you. And one of the things we'll start off with is apologizing. Accountants don't like to apologize, but in this situation, we're later than we should be. Typically, we deliver this in November, December. For circumstances that occurred in our firm, we ended up being severely short-staffed. And I want to thank the council as well as the finance committee and also the city management for the patience, because it was interesting and has been an interesting year. And we're rectifying the situation, but it does take time when staffing becomes very short. With that being said, we'll talk briefly about the audit. There's only about 4 or 5 items we'll talk about, so I can get out of your way and we can get on with it. The reality with it is the city's operations, the audit report came back with unmodified, which basically means it's clean. The opinion is clean. The city staff has done their job. The results for the year for the general fund and showed that we had an increase over the prior year, which is always positive. We always worry about where we're going, and budget-wise, we turned out fine. We found no reportable issues with compliance or internal control, which means that the job that your city management and finance committee are doing to maintain and take care of the city funds are great. All federal government awards subject to the single audit procedures passed our review. So all that is something we have to do. That's why the little book that we talk about and goes from being about this thick by the time we get done with all the tests and all the reports that we have to issue regarding the general financial statements as a whole, as well as everything for single audit. You've been very fortunate over the years that you have received the GFOA Award of Excellence because of your reporting, and that's what we hope to continue. Any questions?
So as I understood what you said, for the layman's terms, there was no misappropriation of funds. Everything was in line with what was expected and budgeted.
Correct. Correct.
No corrections necessary.
Well, there's always adjustments, but
Right.
those are not things that are out of compliance with budget or otherwise.
Okay. And so clean audit.
Clean audit.
Okay. How about other questions from the council? Yes, Councilor Brown.
Thank you for your work, Mr. Barnett. Question to you. And I believe we've had this come up last year, but in our recent budget struggles, I understand that audits are just show where the money is going and if it's being, I guess, if it's being done legally correct. Is there any expertise? And I know we have a new finance manager, but is there any expertise that if there's something that, I guess if we're spending more than we're taking in, or if there's any red flags, are those things that come up also in the audit?
Yeah, basically we do tests of controls to make sure that we're in compliance with what the city has set as standards. And we go through that, we evaluate those and we report on them accordingly. That's one of the reports that's in here. When we look through that and as we go through the finance, can we always do it better? Absolutely. Can your finance group and people do it better? Absolutely. We all can. We had a number of adjustments this year, but they weren't adjustments that are negative. They're just adjustments, reclassifying and doing different things of that nature. A little more than normal this year, but not anything that alarms us.
Thank you. You just specifically mentioned like, that part of the audit is where we're going. And so that's kind of where I was trying to see if we can get a little bit more expertise, because if years back, we knew where we were going with what we were currently doing it back then, more or less why I'm asking. And
Yeah, I think we can always have better because the one thing that has happened that you've grown a little bit over the last few years, and what happens, we don't take it in consideration because, oh, it's just the same numbers. The amount of transactions, the size of transactions, everything that goes with that becomes more complex. And so with that, as I would tell you, and I would, give the city administration advice, would do anything you can do to bring your accounting staff to the highest level possible. Because they, on a day-to-day basis, are checking those dots and making sure that everything fits where it needs to go. The group we've had has done fine. It's not perfect, and no business is, but it's been fine. Always can be better.
thank you.
Yes, Council Premier.
And I'm noting this is for fiscal year ending June 30 of 2023. This is not
Correct.
beyond
Yeah,
that
this is for
date.
the last year. Since that time, basically you're been operating as is, and we'll be looking at that again at sometime this next year when June 30th comes to play. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Yep.
Other questions, comments? In the past, when you have done audits or we've had audits done in the past by others, there's always some sort of instruction to the management team of how to clean it up and do better. And have we done those?
We basically comment during those period of times and then we review afterwards as we go through that and propose the audit as it is, and they review it. We discuss with them procedures, things of that nature that we have, as well as when we're in field work out in the actual audit process, we're talking to them about, oh, look at this, look, this could be done a little bit differently. Wouldn't it be better if you did it this way? Because that's all part of the process, is to make it better for everybody, because the easier it is for us, the better it is for you. The better job they do makes it better. And so it's been fine. This year, we continue to grow. You become more complex. It takes more time. So, accountants charge more.
Mr. Smith, any comments on the audit?
No, I mean, I think over the past years, they have made suggestions about maybe different ways to do internal controls, things like that, and we've tried to follow their advice. So good to have one where they didn't have any suggestions specific.
Perfect.
We can always make suggestions. We just think they need to be valuable.
Mhm.
And that's, and that's where we look at it. And this year was the year that things were fine.
Good, perfect. Any other questions? All right.
You don't
Thank
want to
you,
go through
Mr.
the
Barn.
whole version?
No, we don't need to hear the whole version.
Okay.
And I don't think the crowd wants to. hear
Thank
the-
you.
Thank you. Well, and we appreciate you, Dennis. I know that it's been a tough year for you and your organization, and we appreciate you sticking with us and getting through it with us. So thank you for all your hard work. All right. So one of the things too, I'd probably say tonight, specifically because we have a larger attendance than normal, just making sure that people's phones are silenced. When we do have public comment, we do have a very specific timeline that the council has to be done by. So try and limit your discussion. We will limit you to 5 minutes, but if you're repeating something exactly that somebody else said, probably doesn't need to be said again. Just being respectful of everybody's time too tonight. And so making sure that everybody will have an opportunity to do so, and we can get everything done before our timeline. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Okay. Hopefully we get you all out of here by then. All right. So we're at our first opportunity for citizen input. And so these are items not on our current agenda for conversation tonight. You will have opportunities during the regular session or the regular agenda items to speak to each of those. So if there are items not on the agenda tonight you would like to speak to, please come up to the microphone up front, introduce yourself by name and address, and limit your comments to me and direct them to me. Limit your comments to 5 minutes and direct them to me. Okay. None. Going once. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda items A through E. Do we need to poll any of those?
No.
Council? No. Any public comment on consent agenda items A through E? No. Seeing none. Okay. We are going to ask for a motion to approve consent agenda items A through E as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Primer, second by Counselor, is that Duran?
Mhm.
Yep. To approve consent agenda items A through E. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, and we have a brand new business in town, so congratulations to them. Kagan Cork for opening at 395 East Main Street.
I'm not sure they're open yet, but they have their liquor license.
Yes, they're in the process, so congratulations. All right, so we moved up from 14A above 13A, so I think the reason why a bunch of folks are here tonight, possible action to place a question on the November 2024 ballot related to sale taxation of cannabis. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm just going to do kind of a quick review of what we've talked about in the past, kind of the history of this item, go through a basic look at the ballot process requirements, and then be available for any questions. So why are we here tonight? So in June of last year, City Council and the staff began a review of the city's general fund budget, including potential revenue sources, additional revenue sources. At that time, the city staff did not go into a lot of detail related to a cannabis tax or consider it a viable potential revenue source. And so we didn't really talk about it deeply. And there were many reasons why we didn't kind of go into it anymore at that point. Then in the fall, we put a multi-subject survey, online survey, talking about a number of budget issues. One of the questions was related to what other taxes would the citizens be interested in looking at. 75% of the 425 people who responded to that survey said that a cannabis tax should be considered. So from a history on recreational marijuana in the state, it was adopted in 2014. That's adopted a 17% state tax. A local tax of up to 3% was authorized. 92 cities or counties have taken advantage of that out of approximately 275. Then in 2015, the city council referred to the 2016 ballot the question of Hermiston allowing marijuana businesses and then the potential of taxing them. That measure failed by 442 votes at that time. So now talking a little bit about the kind of a ballot measure initiative referendum. So this is something that's in a number of state constitutions to be a balance between direct democracy and representative democracy. You know, we offer, you know, all of you are elected, but it does reserve for the citizens to put things on the ballot of their own accord. So only primary or general elections in even numbered years are allowed to have ballot measures by the city. Currently, it would require 1,625 signatures to place that on the ballot. Those are registered voters within the city limits. And that number is going to move based on how many registered voters at the time the petitioner might go to create that petition. Tentative deadline to be on the November 2024 ballot would be June 7th, 2024, and that's to allow time to have the signatures reviewed and make sure that they are valid in time for the council to take action and put final on the ballot. That's if it were to go through a citizen initiative. So if the council were to refer this decision to the voters, there'd need to be a lot of discussion about what would be allowed, because there's retail sales, there's wholesale, there's other categories that are under that statute, and whether all of those would be allowed or just some of them would be a decision before that gets placed on the ballot. The discussion of taxation, creating ballot measure languages, and then preparing ordinances to put any restrictions. So cities are allowed to put time, place, and manner to restrictions on the location of those businesses. And many of the other cities that we looked at also have additional or different business license fee amounts that are charged to marijuana-related businesses. So all those questions would need to be talked about and looked at. So then, kind of taking a brief look at the impact, like I mentioned in our last meeting, this is I think it's a hard question for anybody statistically to show 100% causation. But these are the titles of 3 studies that have been done recently. And all 3 of these are related to Oregon, and all 3 of them would say there's some correlation between increased minor usage of marijuana. But again, it's pretty hard all of them recognize that this needs more study to have any definitive causation to put with that. So my recommendation as we go into this discussion is, this issue came up as part of a discussion related to budget issues. The council has made a number of decisions to take other routes related to additional revenue. And so from a revenue standpoint, at this time, the city, it doesn't need this from that standpoint. So staff recommends it be no change to the city ordinances unless there was done through a submitted petition through the residents. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, council, any questions, comments? Yes, Councilor McCarthy.
Assuming there was citizen initiative and they reached the required 1,600 plus signatures, what would be the process then, if any, for council to consider things like the sales tax on it, and location would basically be the same as if we elected to put it on the ballot tonight?
Well, not necessarily, because a lot of that's going to be driven by the chief petitioner, who brings in the original question that then we, as the city staff, react to. So if their original proposal didn't require or didn't include taxation, that wouldn't be part of our discussion, would it? Okay, so we could, if the petition from the citizens only said, to allow the sales, we could, as a city, put the second question on the ballot.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions from the council? Yes, Councilor Peterson.
I'm going to ask your patience as I ask a few questions, and I promise I have a point. When we look back at the consent to agenda items and we see that we just approved a liquor license, just for the sake of what the cannabis topic at hand, what is the procedure for someone going for a liquor license?
All of that, really, that process is 99% with the OLCC. They would make application. They have to fill out forms, show how they're going to serve alcohol, all those things. It comes to us as a city only to review and for the council to make any comments. And frankly, OLCC has they have no obligation to take any of our comments related to alcohol or liquor licenses.
Okay. And the reason why I'm asking is because it's on our consent to agenda items, which is kind of a block. And just as like, kind of a refresher, in the last calendar year, we have passed 4 of those. And no one said anything. Just like, yeah, sure, here's another liquor license, either maintaining one that we have already out there or a new one. So more alcohol. Okay. Now, I personally have a moral thing against alcohol because I watched my dad and 3 of his brothers drink themselves to death. But I have a bigger moral obligation to the citizens about their ability to make choices about legally available substances and the processes and procedures that exist. And that's what my decision is going to be made on, especially when we have asked a direct question and we have gotten a direct response. And that has nothing to do with tax revenue. It has to do with people being able to parent their kids. I parented my kids and I said, hey, watch out for addiction. It's a killer in our family. In schools, they have curriculum about that. We have processes and procedures in place to take care of these things. Alcohol is a killer in my family. I don't drink. But at the same time, when an alcohol liquor license comes across this, my moral obligation to the citizens is bigger than that. It's what I signed up for. And to get up here and say, I have morals against this other substance, I think would be a little hypocritical of me. So that's what I will be voting with. We've asked direct questions of the citizens. For me, it's no longer about taxation. It's what are the people asking for the right to make choices about? And this is, they just want a right to make choices about making a choice. And the procedures are already there.
Thank you. Others? Yeah, Counselor Bremer?
So as many of you folks know, I've been in law enforcement for a long time. And it's safe to say that I've seen how drugs have affected people involved. And rarely are recreational drugs beneficial in any way, shape, or form. While there is some argument anecdotally that marijuana or cannabis, however you want to define it, has therapeutic value. But at the same time, at some point in time in our history, every single substance that is used recreationally, including alcohol, has had a therapeutic value in some form or fashion. But I don't think that as a council that we should give our tacit approval by us placing this on the ballot. Once again, after people have already spoken on this, it has been voted on by the people numerous times. While if somebody else puts it on the ballot and wants to move it forward, be that champion for it, that's their right, that's their ability. But as a council, I don't believe that we should be the sponsor of that, because by us putting it on the ballot, that says that, okay, whatever you want to do. And that's not, I don't think that's where we should be. But that's my opinion.
Thank you. Others? Yeah, Counselor Myers?
The council put it on the ballot the first time, and it was defeated. And I just have a problem with going against what has already been voted on and rescinding, taking away that right that they had to go and vote, which they did. And now just to, throw that away, I just don't see that as beneficial.
Thank you. Counselor Harden?
I would concur with Councilor Primer. And because yeah, we've been here before, and if a local citizen wants to push it forward, but I don't believe it's our position to do it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, Councilor Linton.
Well, I want to say that I agree with Counselor Peterson about allowing the citizens of Hermiston to vote and decide. There's been many laws that have come before many times being voted over and over again, and some people have changed their minds about it. I had a couple of friends that when cannabis was illegal, that were having to go and buy it illegally because they were dying and they couldn't eat. It prolonged their life for months. I was always against the sale of it, but when I actually met people that needed it, I changed my mind because both my friends passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Drawn, you've already asked a question.
That was just a question.
I'll come back to you. Councilor Drawn.
You know, I think that when I see some of the results of people starting to use marijuana, continue on with more powerful drugs, I mean, I see that in the young people. I don't have older friends that maybe have needed it for health reasons. But I am concerned about our youth and what we may be attracting. I think that by opening that door, and plus, you know, a ballot is totally different than a survey. A survey was a small amount of people that we don't know whether, you know, whether the people that took the survey were actually from our area versus people that actually voted on the ballot that live in the Hermiston area. So I am not for us considering it simply because of the risks involved. We see it in our schools. And, you know, even though the chief was not able to quantify how many interactions, you know, the police have in comparison to marijuana and all of that with our youth. But, you know, our resource officers also see and work with some of the youth that have started to use these kinds of drugs. So I am not for it.
I'm going to come back to Councilor Councilor Brown. Have you said something yet? No,
Not yet.
sorry. I
Not
want to
yet.
make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak first.
First of all, thank you everyone for being here in attendance. I definitely want to thank the Hermiston School District for allowing me to participate. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to be here. I have kiddos that have conferences, and I really appreciate the community impact and me being able to be here. In order to make my decision tonight, I did speak to multiple parties. I didn't want to just rely on my opinion, my research. I wanted to speak with different people that have experience with this. And so today I'll talk a little bit about those conversations as well as laying out my thoughts on this budget process, as well as a few pros and cons. But I'll begin with this. The reason that this budget process came to where it's at, I was not very fond of the revenue options and how things were presented. As we all saw earlier here today, with the timeline, the council was presented a couple different revenue options, and of which cannabis was not one of those originally introduced. And I believe during our comments, or at least when we were having conversation about that, city staff mentioned that it'd be anywhere between $20,000, maybe $60,000 in revenue. And so what we were discussing, the cost benefit, it wasn't there. And so the conversation didn't go very far. Now, fast forward to a little bit ago, having more in-depth conversation about potential revenues and comparing ourselves to our partners down in Pendleton. It was not anywhere from 20 to 60,000. It was more 300, 400, $500,000. And so the discrepancy was way off. And so I am disappointed with the revenue option presentation because I myself am pro-business. And I know had we had different options to discuss with the community, we could have had a more robust conversation about revenues. Because we had to tack on $5, I believe, for water, sewer, electricity for additional resource officers. We also are implementing a business license fee, which a lot of businesses are not happy about. And mind you, those two options are equivalent to the cannabis revenue that we could potentially be seeing. Not saying one in favor or the other, but I am saying that a conversation at that point, discussing all the revenue options, all fleshed out, would have led to maybe a different conversation altogether. I do want to share a couple of the conversations I've had with a couple of leaders in other communities. I had a chance to speak with Councilor McDonald, City Councilor from Pendleton. I also had a chance to speak with Councilor Medeles, who is a City Councilor from Ontario, Oregon, each of which have a cannabis dispensary in their local community. And I was really curious to see how their process went, how that went about. And I, quite frankly, was a little surprised to hear how their process went. It went a little like this. The initial conversation was difficult. There was a lot of public feedback about it. And then after the initial conversation, both counselors have attested to me that they have not had any constituent person come up to a city council meeting or in their own private lives have a discussion about cannabis being a negative impact on community. And I'll be very honest and frank, I was a little bit surprised. I was thinking maybe one or two things have come up, each of which have told me no. Both counselors said that the revenue did really well for their cities. Obviously, we know Pendleton's suffering with their street department. All their funds and revenues were able to go to the streets, so their community was very happy. I think in Ontario, they're having issues with PERS and keeping up with the financial liabilities. And so they've said that they've been able to do a lot of great things with PERS and a lot of one-time revenue type projects. I also kind of struggle with the fact that we're saying that we don't need more revenue. Because I feel like as a counselor, I know one day we're probably going to have discussions again about potentially generating more revenue and coming back to the constituents about that for one way or the other. That being said, I also had a couple of conversations with law enforcement in the area. And the big thing that I've heard from law enforcement was not necessarily the cannabis impact, but it was more the impacts of Measure 110 and the hard drugs that were allowed to be, I guess, utilized without very much penalty. And so a lot of the people, or I guess, that are struggling with addiction are not really our cannabis users, but they're really the people that are really hooked on hard drugs. That being said, I understand the arguments of cannabis being a gateway drug. I've heard that. Whether I believe that completely or not, I guess that's to each and every one and whoever has their beliefs in that. I will say this, any sort of drug use is not good, is not good for building up a person, whether that's alcohol, whether that's cannabis, whether that's any other drug. Being impaired is obviously not going to lead to a productive citizenry. I do want to talk a little bit about some pros and cons that I was able to kind of see in my conversations with a couple of stakeholders, other than obviously the tax revenue. I believe if this does pass, that there would be very, 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 very stringent, strict things. So I would see very limited stores. I would see very specific locations. I would see the full tax revenue at 3%, and I would see all of that money dedicated to public safety, in my opinion. I believe if this were to pass, I believe that's the best resource and the best place for it to go. $400,000 would definitely be at least 3 officers on the street. All that being said, I stand here today usually very resolute and decisive. I do my homework. I spoke to multiple parties, try to get some wisdom from other communities as well. And I stand here today willing to listen to public testimony and respect my constituents' time. You guys are all here today because you have opinions, you feel a certain way about community. I'm not going to tell you right here, right now that I'm going to make a decision. I quite frankly don't think that'd be very respectful for everyone that's here today wanting to voice their opinions for change. So I stand here without a decision just yet, but I stand here ready to listen to all my constituents, and we'll take in every single comment, whether it's all the way to 10 p.m. And thank you very much. And that's all that I have to share for right now.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor McCarthy, you had your hand up again.
Thank you. Just first a question, as a matter of process, there's not an additional portion for council comment after hearing public testimony?
You can.
I'd like to reserve that option,
Yeah.
if I may.
Yeah. I don't see why you can't.
I would like to do that.
Okay. Yes, Counselor Lynn.
Thank you. I wanted to ask City Manager Smith, if it was to go on the ballot and it did pass, what is the age limit for people to be able to go in there and buy the cannabis?
21.
It'll be 21. And as been said, I think it would be safer coming out of that, of a facility where right now, if the kids are getting weed, if they're smoking it and you're seeing it, then they're buying it from people selling it out in the street. And which means anybody could lace it with something. I'm hoping that children will not use drugs or not get drugs or not even smoke weed. And but if they're going to get the drugs and if they're having problems with it now, that means they're getting it off the street. And I don't really know how we could solve that problem. I really don't know. I know that a lot of good people have tried, and that includes a family, you know, trying to teach their children the right way to go and not to do drugs, not to do alcohol. For those that do drink, if you're over 21, that's between you and as an adult to decide. And so I want to thank you for that. Thank you.
Yes, Counselor Peterson.
City Manager Smith, so we voted on this the last time, 2016, correct?
Correct.
So do we know what the population increase in Hermiston has been since that time? Because if it got voted down by less than 450, and we know the population has increased since that time, and we know that people who couldn't vote that were even living here can now vote, then holding the city accountable to something that was voted on 8 years ago to that degree, do we know?
Yeah, approximately 3,000 people.
Okay, so approximately 6 times the number of people that voted against it at that point. That was the swinging vote. That's an awful lot of people, I think, to hold accountable to something that was voted down 8 years ago, knowing that some of those people, either direction, may have changed their mind. Because we learn stuff as we get older. At least I'd like to hope I do.
I would say that that's 3,000 people, not necessarily voters.
Right. Other comments? Okay. We're gonna let the public speak. You can participate in this conversation. So who wants to go first? Come on up. Yep.
Hi, Council, Mr. Mayor.
Evening.
My name is James Hurst. My address is 600 West Division Avenue. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Hermiston School Board of Directors and the over 5,000 students we serve. We are unanimously against any action which facilitates increased access to cannabis in our community. We want to be very clear. We understand you're not voting to permit dispensaries. You're voting to use taxpayer dollars to put the question to the voters a third time. As our state continues to reel from the impact of Measure 110 and the overwhelming harm it has caused, and as a bill sits on our governor's desk right now to repeal that failed drug experiment, this body is considering sending the question of cannabis sales back to the voters for another try. We are against any action that could result in getting pot shops closer to our kids. The financial gain expected from cannabis stores will be eaten up by the social ills it will bring about in terms of decreased productivity and harm to our kids. The cost is too high. An October 2023 study of Oregon's marijuana legalization experiment shows that students, particularly in middle school, are profoundly affected by the proximity of dispensaries within a mile of a school. It shows a 30% increase in discipline referrals for substance use offenses not related to alcohol or tobacco. If you were to draw a 1-mile radius circle around each of our schools, you'll find there is no space for a dispensary that will not harm our kids. Data shows increased legal access leads to increased illegal use by kids, increased behavior problems in schools, decreased attendance, and lower graduation rates. The CDC warns about the harm to teen brains, mental health problems like depression, social anxiety, and temporary psychosis, as well as more serious and permanent problems like schizophrenia. Increased access and use will lead to increased instances of impaired driving. The CDC goes on to warn against the impact in reaction times, coordination, and concentration while driving. Dispensaries today are not popular for their joints or weed. The THC content in a marijuana leaf is about 15%. The dispensaries attract users with flavored gummies and Jolly Rancher-like candies, especially attractive to kids. They have watermelon whip cannabis oil with THC content approaching 90%. This data comes from the Seattle Times editorial board as they try to sound the alarm. If you choose to invite a vote to bring cannabis into our town, bringing it closer to our kids, you need to know the product you're inviting in. According to a Washington State report, they don't resemble the plant. They're as close to the cannabis plant as strawberries are to frosted strawberry Pop-Tarts. Dr. Leslie Walker Harding of Seattle Children's says it's just getting worse in terms of the number of kids who are being impacted by cannabis because the potency is so high. We're now seeing many more mental health issues, schizophrenia, psychosis, depression, anxiety. I've seen it and it's scary. Our teachers and staff are already working through dysregulated student behaviors, disrupted learning events, and chronic absenteeism. Remember our students and community when you vote. A vote to move this forward is a vote against our kids and against our future. A couple other notes. At $400,000, the number in Pendleton equals over $13 million in sales at 3% tax and about $20 per citizen in revenue. Not worth the cost. It's a longer impact. The studies show the damage. Other communities in Oregon and Washington are now asking how to fix the problems created and regulate better. We should not experiment with our kids or ask the entities benefiting from its revenue as to its value. The genie is out for them. And hoping is a bad way to make kids not use. You got to deny the access. Thank you.
Thanks, James. I would discourage the audience from clapping this evening. We have rules and decorum that prohibit that, but I understand people are passionate about this. Let's let everybody speak. So it's not a popularity show.
My name is Manuel Gutierrez, and I live at 750 East Queens, Hermiston, Oregon. And I'm going to talk about history a little bit today. In 1960, the United States became real concerned because Mexico have a lot of production of marijuana and heroin. In late 70s, we did send some agents to the state of Jalisco and the city of Guadalajara, but there were limited things that they can no arrest, they can have no guns, were real limited. Enrique Macarena, one of the agents, applied for the job in late 1980s. He got the job. And the only thing he can do, he got connection with pilots, and he started flying in Mexico and different states. 1982, he found one of the marijuana plants in the state of San Luis Potosí, right on the borderline with Zacatecas. It was about 2,000 acres of marijuana, about 4 tons. In 1984, He flew to Durango and they was ready to return, but they went into the Chihuahua state and they found what they call the Buffalo Ranch. That production was the biggest production in the Mexican. It was $8 billion. And what I see, you're trying to give part of that pie, the money. This cost the life of Macarena. Macarena was turned by people that was higher in the Mexican Senate and representatives, and they turned him into the Guadalajara. I think I got the names. Was the Guadalajara Carteo, Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, Rafael Caro Quintero, and you guys heard a lot about Rafael Caro Quintero. 1985, he was kidnapped on February 7, 1985. He was tortured and he was killed. He died in February 9, 1985. The United States closed the borderline. No cars went out, no cars coming in. It's the first time I saw the United States closing the border. I have never seen that before. Until they push and push, because they want the agent Macarena to be returned to the United States. A month later, they found him buried in Michoacan. So that is what marijuana does, kill people. Let's talk about right here. 2007, about 5 miles east in 730, a guy come with a shot to the hospital. The state police called me to translate. I went and translate. They found another guy dead. And the fight was because they have a marijuana plantation. And now ask me how many plants. I forgot to call Mike Wilson. Probably he knows this, how many plants was there. And let's talk about this month, in March 2nd, a state trooper got killed because this guy was speedy, going too fast. But he said that he has smoked marijuana and only have one drink. That is like, you guys need to really think about what you guys want to do. I don't want to see somebody else's kill because we're going to sell marijuana. And I think that probably going to hurt everybody here, but we already voted no twice. Have a little respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Memo.
Hello, council members. Thank you for your time. My name is Alberto Munoz, 1480 Northeast Kenna Drive. I want to start off by saying that I understand the concerns that are being presented here, but I also feel like it's a disservice to try to use fear when talking about cannabis use, and try to use terms that draw negative connotation, because it is a very complex subject when we talk about the history of drugs, specifically cannabis, here in the United States. What I want to focus on is things that I know that are happening here in our community. Somebody a lot smarter than me might have the data that, can be used to support some of the statements that I'm going to say here. But just from, living here, and I feel like I'm in a unique point where I have friends that are older generation and I have friends that are younger generation. So I feel like I hear point of views from both of them. And, I try to listen to different perspectives when I draw my own conclusions on something. But here in Hermiston, we are fully supporting the amount of money that Pendleton and the Tri-Cities is making off of their cannabis dispensaries. I mean, that is known. And with that, I do think that there are some things that we have to consider. This might, correct me if I'm wrong, or apologies if I'm wrong, but this is intended for adult use, right? and obviously there are things that, you know, we have to do as a community to ensure that that's who's going to partake in cannabis if we do decide to put it on the ballot and vote in favor or nay. But people from here are driving every other day, every other week, every month to these other local communities to buy cannabis. And with that, you know, not only do we want to look at it from money being lost or potentially being lost if, you know, we decide to put this on the ballot and vote in favor of it, but we're also talking about people going out of our town, out of their way to be able to purchase this. And there's so many variables at play when somebody has to travel outside of town for something. You know, and the hope is that they're partaking in it responsibly. But that's just something that is definitely happening. Every day, people are going to these other communities and using their money there. And another thing that I want to talk about is cannabis being mixed with other drug use. Unfortunately, the history shows that with this being outlawed, you know, if you have cannabis available and you're a drug dealer, you are also likely to have other substances available as well. So the connotation that, you know, this leads to that, I think is more of something that has to do with that being around each other. And I think that if we vote in against this, the people that are going to be the happiest are the drug dealers here in town. They're the ones that are selling the stuff to the children or to the minors, I should say. They're the ones that are profiting from this. You know, and that obviously has a domino effect on, you know, however you want to look at it, crime, the effect that it's having on our schools. So I just wanted to share that. I just think that, you know, just from my own experience, from talking to others, those are things that I know that are happening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Albert.
Cut anybody off? Good evening. My name is Josh Roberts. I live at 1709 Northeast 6th Place here in Hermiston. Just take a minute to kind of briefly recap some of the things that we've already heard. So I'm not going to take too much of my time because I had great big paragraphs here. But the youth is something that's concerning to me as well. I had statistics from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health talking about how there's 42.3 million people ages 12 and older that have used marijuana in the last month. The most of those are between the ages of 18 and 25. So we do know that that youth is an issue. And I included 18 to 25 in there because we know that people's brains continue to develop into their mid-20s. So that 13 to 25 age group is definitely being impacted by this. So I kind of want to focus a little bit more on an article that I read from the National Library of Medicine, and I think it says it best. It said, the alcohol industry has frequently been allowed to promote the heavy use of its products to maximize their profits. A legal for-profit cannabis industry regulated in this way can be expected to behave like the alcohol industry. Its best customers will be daily users, many of whom may be problem users. Such an industry will therefore have an interest in maximizing the number of daily users and in recruiting new users to replace those who quit. So that brings up a statement that I've said here before at previous meetings, and that is by allowing cannabis businesses to operate and collecting taxes from those entities, the city will be effectively profiting from people's addiction. And so I ask, is that the type of community that we want to be? And my last brief point is just about the cost to the city to put it on the ballot. I think the city manager once said that it could cost thousands of dollars for us to do this. However, because private citizens can put forth their own initiative and place the measure on the ballot, I don't understand why this city is offering to use taxpayer funds to foot the cost when the citizens can do this at their own initiative. So those are my thoughts, and I thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Don Mathis, P.O. Box 825, Hermiston, Oregon 97838. Um, I'm just trying to get some clarification because I was here last month. And the way I understood the way this started out was the board or council was basically saying that they weren't going to pay to put this on the ballot. And I believe last month it was like $10,000 or something like that. I don't remember. It was a significant amount of money. Even last month when it was discussed, there was, the citizens could create an initiative to bring this forward. And I know there's a lot of people giving testimony one way or another about this initiative. And I think the bottom line is the question is, is the city council voting to put this on the ballot? And if not, the testimony is fantastic, but I don't know that this is necessarily the venue for that, because are we trying to change the mind? I think the board has made it clear that city council's made it clear that if the citizens want this, we need to band together as citizens and get that initiative to move forward and do something for this. You know, if we want it that bad, then we need to stand together and do that instead of going over every reason why we do or don't want it. We can't decide somebody else's moral high ground or whether they have one or not. And I did have a question, and maybe I'll get a hold of somebody later, but is there a criteria like OLCC? Is that the same board that you go to get a license to open a dispensary? I mean, what are those regulations? How does that come out? Because if the city does put that in, then, you know, I definitely want to know, like, what are those regulations and, you know, and how strict can we be as a city letting those in here, you know? What's that going to look like? And I think we should definitely monitor how it comes in if it passes. Thanks.
Thank you, Dawn.
John Lawrence, 81670 Oxbow Lane, Umatilla, Oregon. But tonight I'm here as a representative of the Good Shepherd Healthcare System. I'm the chairman of board trustees. And along with the Good Shepherd Community Foundation Board, we strongly oppose legalizing commercial cannabis sales in Hermiston. Both boards have had discussions about this potential ballot item and approach this issue from a health outcomes and safety standpoint. The consensus from both boards is that the legalization of commercial cannabis sales will further perpetuate its use, thus negatively impacting the health of our community and patients. It would undoubtedly be counterproductive to our mission, which is to improve the health of the communities we serve. The legalization of commercial cannabis sales within Hermiston would be harmful to the health and well-being of its citizens for the following health and safety reasons as outlined by the CDC. Driving within 24 hours of marijuana use has immediate impact on thinking, attention, memory, coordination, movement, and time perception, all impacting the ability to drive. It increased the risk for developing marijuana use disorder, addiction. It delivers harmful substances, including many of the same toxins and carcinogens found in tobacco smoke. It negatively impacts the lung health, including harm to lung tissues, scarring, and damage to the small blood vessels, which leads to greater risk for bronchitis, cough, and mucus production. It increases the risk of stroke, heart disease, and other vascular diseases. It has long-term effects on the brain, especially if it began at a young age, which impacts attention, concentration, and ability to learn, and decreases memory function. Pregnant mothers' use can cause health problems in newborns, including lower birth weight and abnormal neurological development. Marijuana, THC, can be passed to infants and children through secondhand smoke. Children exposed to THC are potentially at risk for negative health effects. In Good Shepherd's emergency department, our providers have seen cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome in patients presenting it to our ED that may be the cause by prolonged marijuana use when they experience repeated and severe bouts of nausea, vomiting, dehydration, and stomach pain. According to our most recent 2021 Community Health Needs Assessment, representing Umatilla and parts of Morrow County, 17.3% of those 500 individuals surveyed report using marijuana or THC. increasing access by commercial cannabis sales could dramatically increase this number and thereby risk of short-term and long-term negative health effects. Due to the compelling health outcomes, risks, and safety concerns, we feel it is our duty to urge you as our city council members to prevent the addition of commercial cannabis sales on the upcoming ballot. We feel that any revenue generated from legalization is far outweighed by the negative ramifications to our patients, their families, and the community health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you for this discussion. I'm Dean Fialka. I'm the current president of the Good Shepherd Healthcare Foundation, 610 Northwest 11th Street, Hermiston. And as my colleague, Mr. Lawrence said, our board is in complete agreement with the Board of Trustees from the Good Shepherd Healthcare System with all the reasons he gave. So I just wanted to go on records that we are in full agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Good evening, Council and Mr. Mayor. Josiah Barron, 457 Stevens Avenue, Umatilla. I'm here on behalf of the Umatilla School Board as such a close neighboring community, just 7 miles down the road. I came here, as I said, on behalf of the Umatilla School Board to present our regarding this matter and just share this letter from the whole school board here. So regarding this matter of concern to our schools, students, and the broader community that we serve, it has come to our attention that discussions and potential plans to permit marijuana dispensaries within the city limits here in Hermiston. While we understand the complexities and various perspectives surrounding this issue, we feel compelled to share our experiences and the impacts we have observed while following the legalization and local availability of drugs, including marijuana, on young people in our community. We have noted a discernible decline in student attendance rates since the decriminalization of drugs. This trend is alarming, not only because it disrupts the educational process, but also because it often signifies a broader issue in students' lives, including increased exposure to and use of marijuana and often other drugs. Attendance is foundational element of the academic success, and its decline signals a distressing shift in priorities away from education. The safety of our students is paramount, and we have observed situations that compromise their safety directly related to the increased availability of drugs. This includes incidents on school grounds and the broader community, where students have been found in possession of or under the influence of drugs, including marijuana. Parental attention has also suffered in some situations, further risking student safety. We have encountered an increasing number of situations where parental use of marijuana, normalized by its legal status, has led to diminished engagement in their children's education and reduced supervision in the home. In light of these concerns, we strongly believe that allowing marijuana dispensaries in Hermiston would exacerbate these issues. The proximity of dispensaries to schools, even if technically outside the minimum distance required by law, reduces the perceived severity and potential risks of marijuana use among young people. It subtly shifts community norms and attitudes towards acceptance and normalization of drug use, which is not in the best interest of our students or the community or our region at large. Thank you for considering our perspective in this crucial matter, and we, as you, are committed to the well-being of our community and our neighboring communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Josiah.
Jenny Galloway, 4607 Southwest Perkins Avenue, Pendleton, Oregon. I work as a professional in Hermiston with the school district, so I'm working with parents and children all day. A lot has been said that I don't want to be repetitive about, because I know that was one of the talking points, but I couldn't concur more, especially with the depression that we're seeing, sometimes epileptic seizures, stomach issues, that are keeping kids from attending school. My couple other talking points are, Senate Bill 817 that was in 2022 that brought in no consequence to truancy. We're still in post-pandemic conditions where we're trying to get youth back into school through resiliency programs, through Hermiston School District offers a summer school program. I mean, the district does things so well that I just feel this is not going to help in the upward movement of getting kids back in school, and continuing education, our graduation rates and so forth. As I have said, I'm also a Pendleton resident. So I said this before the meeting. If I was here, sitting here, I would say she needs to go back to her zip code. She's not a taxpayer and she does not live here. So I do want to say, coming from Pendleton, where I was born and raised there, I have opinions on how I feel it's been perceived in the community. So I reached out also to a couple city constituents on the matter. And I was told, wish we would have never done that. Didn't bring in the tax money that we thought it would. So this isn't everyone though, you guys. This is a couple people I talked to. So this isn't everyone in the city council. And then bigger than that, I just want to say over here, because I love it over here in Hermiston. I love coming over here to work every day. Be mindful, additionally, with the social health determinants that you've heard stated today, of how you want your community to look. I understand people can get things wherever they can get things, and that's going to happen, and for some very good reasons that we're going to say. But be mindful. I go back to the water tower and what was printed on your water tower, and how everyone would talk about where we grow, and our students would talk about that and like that. And I think the well-intentioned person meant agriculture and watermelons. But the brand and the message that you're sending throughout your whole community when you make a move like this, I'm also going to say, and this is tongue in cheek, but a lot of people go to Tri-Cities to shop at Costco, and I would rather see that here. And I know that isn't the conversation tonight. So on that note, thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm sure we could find you a house over here in Hermiston to buy. Others? Come on.
Karen Jones, 1010 West Highland Avenue in Hermiston. I didn't come intending to talk about this tonight. I have very mixed feelings about it, but I've also had close family members who could not get any relief from cancer after a certain point, from prescription narcotics that were available, and who opted not to try marijuana, cannabis, anything, because it was an illegal substance and they didn't want to put anybody else at risk by buying it for them. So they opted not to, and I can tell you that they suffered horrifically, and I would not wish that on anyone. I also have the perspective of having had two major drug dealers that operated out of my neighborhood for an extensive time period. And I can tell you how terrifying that was, and how often the police would be coming, and the different drug dealers coming in, not only from the United States, but from Canada, and all of the things that that brought to my neighborhood. So from that perspective, I would say that I would much rather take the money out of the illegal drug users and out of drug houses into a legally highly regulated dispensary. And I certainly have a concern for the youth. I grew up here. I know what a horrific drug problem we've had here over the years. I myself don't use it. I just never have been interested in it. But I do think that there are people who can medically benefit from it. And I would hope that the city council would explore it maybe a little bit more. And maybe talk to the police and find out what kind of an impact they think it would be in this area. If it would help with the illegal drug use, the illegal marketing here, which is ongoing, or if they think it's a bad idea, because I really value their opinion. The other thing is, you know, somebody had brought up alcohol. There are businesses that sell alcohol not far from my neighborhood, and that certainly had a real impact on my neighborhood too. I often see drunks walking up and down my street now, which I never used to see, and I see people driving extremely recklessly. So I think, you know, we have to consider all of those things. I don't know if it's a good idea. I don't know if it's a bad idea, but I think that there are a lot of things that need to be explored before you move forward with it or you say no. And once again, I would just really value their opinion to see what they have to say. And I know it certainly has impacted Walla Walla and Pendleton in a really financially positive way. And I was actually curious because I'd never been to a dispensary. So I actually did what one of your city council members did. And I actually went to a dispensary in Walla Walla to see what it looked like. And I also went to one of the dispensaries in Pendleton to see what it looked like. They were not at all what I had expected them to be. I mean, to go in, you had to show ID, you had to show your legal age. But once again, I don't know if it's a good idea. I don't know if it's a bad idea, but I think there are other things that we need to consider before making a decision about this. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Wow. My name's Scott Wadey Camper, 1530 Southwest River Hill Drive. I think I'd rather talk that direction than this direction. Nothing personal.
Well, Scott, the public comment section is for you to speak to the council.
Okay,
Thank you.
you betcha. You know, I don't think we're talking about whether pot's dangerous or not. You know, we all know it's dangerous. But you can't make it illegal. It just doesn't work. I mean, cigarettes are dangerous, right? Coffee's not the best. Wine, bourbon, whiskey, vodka, you know, all that stuff's not good for us, but you can't take a person's rights away from them. You just can't. It's called the law of supply and demand. You know, we tried to do this in 1920, prohibition, for 13 years, and it went to the underground. And that's the same thing that happens here. You know, that's what's happened with heroin that we mentioned. You know, it came from Mexico. Marijuana used to come from Mexico. You know, I guess I'm here, you know, to come out of the closet. I like pot, you know, I like to smoke pot. When I was younger here in Hermiston, I made a business out of dealing marijuana, you know, and that was somewhat dangerous. And because I was in that business, I got into the business of dealing other drugs that were on the street. So when we talk about it being a gateway drug, it's not a gateway drug. It's dangerous for our kids if we keep it illegal, because they end up in a drug dealer's house getting marijuana instead of a store. You know, if we're going to talk about, what do you say, something about a mile radius or something like that? You know, how many bars and taverns are within 50 yards of this place, right? You got the Cozy, you got Hales. You guys help me out. Where do you guys drink? You know, where are you going to head after the party here? And it's just, I'm available. You know, my number's 571-8161. You know, I'm an expert in marijuana. I've grown, my degree in college was crop production because I've always been an entrepreneur and I saw the avenue there, you know, was it right? No. Was it illegal? Yes. Did the culture cause that situation? Yeah. You know, that's all I'm here for is to change our culture. I'm not here to argue and fight or anything. I just want to share my experience, you know, and my strength and my hope, as they talk about in the 12-step meetings that, you know, I've been to treatment 6 times and none of them were for marijuana. You know, the first time was for cocaine. They used to have a treatment center here in up in Pendleton called the Care Unit, you know, and I had a very successful business, small business in this town. I thought it was really successful. Yeah, so I mean, I just started thinking, you guys, I got page after page after page of stuff. The state's already legalized it. Anybody can grow 4 plants in their backyard. So, you know, if you're talking about legal or illegal, that's not an issue anymore. And we're kind of getting behind. We're behind. I mean, we're just making, somebody brought up something about going to Pendleton and Tri-Cities and getting weed. Well, they probably aren't going to be able to wait till they get back to Hermiston to smoke it. So they're going to get high and drive back to Hermiston. Where if they could buy it in Hermiston, they would just have to go home and then get high. So anyway, you have my phone number and I claim to be an expert in this. And I love this community. I really respect what law enforcement and everybody does here. The politicians, what they do here, that's not my thing. But I want to thank you guys for doing that. And thanks for listening to just a simple pothead.
Thanks, Scott.
My name is Irma de Anda. I live at 750 East Quince here in Hermiston. We've heard a lot about how marijuana may be a gateway drug. I work for DHS Child Welfare, and I can tell you approximately 99% of our cases were related to drugs, which started with marijuana and continued on to harder drugs. The ramifications of putting dispensary here in Hermiston is, like you said, we're making money off of victims who have been addicted to the drugs. And I really think you should really think this over because it affects everyone. It'll affect us by needing more police force. It affects us because of the fact that they get addicted to these drugs. He's been how many times to rehab? How many times have I seen parents that I worked with time and time again? They started out with something marijuana. Oh, it's just a recreational drug. But because they're hungry for more excitement and whatnot, they go on to harder drugs. These parents are not, then they lose the responsibility of that nurturing that they had for their children. So who loses out every time? It's the children. It's the next generation that's coming up. We need to think very carefully. So adults, they want to buy it, let them go where they can buy it. But let's not make it readily available so that our children can get their hands to it. I know that in the past, we were very careful on the licensures for liquor because of also making money off of addictions. And I'm sorry that there's more and more now bars in this place, but let's keep our community a safe one. Let's keep our children safe. You as a school teacher, you know the ramifications of what it does to our children. Let's think about them. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Irma.
Miranda Ainsworth, 521 Northeast Aspen Drive. I am always been for marijuana, as I have had a lot of family and friends growing up who I've actually known to suffer from different ailments that multiple other medications didn't solve and didn't help. And marijuana was beneficial to helping them be able to eat, like Graves' disease, and I've had glaucoma myself, and I used for a time, and I actually watched my vision get better to the point where it's not as severe now, though I've been sober for quite some time now, and I'm actually starting to have problems again. So it's kind of conflicting for me. And been kind of a hard decision for me myself as staying sober. And yet I'm having more vision problems in doing so. It's a really hard thing for me as well, because my son is very anti-drugs, he knows all about it. I discuss those things with him, but he still has to take medication to go to school for his ADHD. And his teachers, I've taken him off his medication a couple times, trying to have him not on his medication, and he didn't function very well in school. In fact, his teachers asked him to be put back on his medication because he didn't function and do as well. I know it's completely different kind of medication, but it's the same aspect as sometimes different medications help people in different ways. And I know that marijuana is not beneficial for everyone, and it does have a potential to be abused just like any other medication. I just think that it shouldn't be removed as an option for people, and it should definitely be maybe given to the community again as an option. And there are so many regulations with the different dispensaries upon who gets in there. You have to have your ID it's pretty, nobody under 18 is getting in there. They're really meticulous about protecting their business license, and it is taxed. And it does go back towards the community, which is generally needed. I don't know. I've always been in support of it, but I've also been on the other side where I've seen it. Other people, it does get to a point where they do have problems with it. It is a hard thing to choose, and I really just think that it should be given to the community to choose again. It's been over 8 years, and we're opening up more liquor places and alcohol places. I think that the community would appreciate an option to have it back on the ballot, whether it be we get petitions or whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. Others?
Good evening. My name's Liz Marvin, 1725 East Highland Avenue. Don't live in the city limits, but I am a property owner within the city limits. I want to submit for the mayor and the council's review. This is for Dawn and Kelly Bissinger. They were unable to be here tonight. They have gathered some signatures from folks that do not want this to go on the ballot. And so they weren't able to come. So I told them that I would submit it for them. I do have a couple of just thoughts that I had, and I really appreciate the discussion and the amount of attention that you all are giving in the respect to all the speakers. That's not an easy thing to do, and I appreciate that. Something that when you were talking about the guidelines and the considerations for the naming earlier, I thought that was interesting, that one of the points was that we wanted to keep a wholesome nature. We didn't want an alcohol or tobacco company to have naming rights on any of our parks or city facilities. What Jenny had to say was really good, is that I think we want to be cognizant of how we look the perception of our town. Another thing, Congresswoman Linton, you made an excellent point. You were talking about these drugs being safer, that they wouldn't be tainted. That scares me because then that makes me think that kids would have more access to this. I mean, that's like, I'm sure it would happen. You find someone that's older and they go in and they buy the drugs and they bring them out and they give them to the younger ones. And then the last point was that the revenue, if we're looking at 300 to 500,000 in revenue, 13 million in sales, do we really want that level of impairment in our town? So, thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Counselor Linton, I think you got elevated to Congresswoman Linton. All right, others. Going once, others? All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
may I just make sure that you are looking at your email? There are some written comments that have come in electronically from those who are participating via Zoom.
Lily, is there anybody online that wanted to speak?
Not that has indicated such.
Okay. Got it. All right. Those came in earlier tonight, right? There wasn't anything just recently?
No.
Okay. Perfect. All right, council, you requested some more conversation time. So what are your thoughts? Who wants to go first? Yeah, Councilor McCarthy.
Since we've begun discussing this, thought that the only correct way for me to go was one way. And since doing this, I've thought that there must be more than one. It's interesting hearing everybody's opinion. David, the person who lives in Hermiston, agrees and disagrees with a lot of points that have been made tonight, both in favor and against. I think it's interesting when you look into the history of the criminalization of cannabis, how that came to be. I think when we're looking at statistics, comparing the effects of impairment between marijuana and alcohol, that certainly more study needs to be done. Yet the research that I've done, and I hesitate to call it the term research when all I'm really doing is Googling and finding articles, leads me to believe that things are on an even playing field. But David, the person, isn't the position that I feel that I'm in, and I say that just in relating myself, but I think that's largely for everyone on the council, is we are made up of we are a body that is made up of people who voted for us. And I think we have a responsibility as elected officials to reflect the opinions of people who have made that decision before. And we have a history of it being turned down at least once by the voters, by a rather significant margin of the voters that showed up. And I have a theory, and I've said this before in other meetings, that the people that show up to vote, and we have very low voter turnout, but I think the people that show up to vote are more than likely the people that probably stick around in Hermiston, and thus would likely be the people that would show up to vote again were this to come on a ballot measure. We've also talked about the impact of cost of just putting this on the ballot, never mind the impact of making sure people are operating correctly if they decide to come forward and put it into Hermiston. I also want to compliment, I can't remember the names of the individuals, Liz, Marvin, that you mentioned who would gather some signatures, but I am surprised that the people who are proponents for dispensaries existing have not done something like that. That's been commented before in the past, that there hasn't been really a group to come together to do that. I don't think anybody's really been unaware that that was an option, but I don't think anyone's considered it. I think there are people here tonight who might be the champion of such a cause if people wanted to bring it forward as part of a constituent movement to allow dispensaries. And I think that's probably the only way it'll actually happen. I believe that were this to go on the ballot, and again, my opinion, were this to go on the ballot to the voters, it would get voted down. And I don't think it's worth the cost to the city, especially when we're counting budget analysis, for us to consider that.
Other comments? Councilor Peterson?
I'm going to make a similarity to what you just said, and I pardon if I cause offense, but to me that sounds like when saying we let's not spend the money to put it on the ballot because we're pretty sure about the outcome, is the historical. And again, I could be off base. I apologize ahead of time, but the historical equivalent of, do women really need to vote? They're just going to vote how their husbands do anyway. We won't know unless we let them try.
Ms. Smith, cost to the council to put this on the ballot was about $8,000.
Yeah, so that was when we were considering that it could be on a special election ballot. When it's on the general, when we already have offices that are related to the city, there is no additional cost.
Okay. And then also if there's an initiative petition,
Same
cost.
Same cost, 0.
Okay. Councilor Drawn.
I think you brought up a good point, and I have to be careful as to how I vote in the future because you're right, alcohol is a drug. And so thank you because as soon as I seconded the motions in general, because there were other things that we were voting on, but thank you for bringing that to light to me tonight. And I appreciate everyone that came tonight. Some of you, are for it. Some of you are against it. And I appreciate the time that you took because this is what I like to see, democracy at its best. Hoping that you felt like you were heard. And if you didn't speak up, I'm sorry that you didn't feel like you could speak. But I think the adults have spoken tonight. Some of the speakers mentioned the kids. And the kids that have lived the ramifications are not here tonight. They did not have a voice. And that is who we also have to keep in mind. I'm looking at our goals that we are later going to approve as well. One of them is livability. We promote diverse housing options, convenient and accessible community assets, a healthy environment, and a high-quality education. What would be, we are approving something, but by taking a vote for it, I think we're kind of ignoring some of the aspects of the goals that we are going to be voting on too. I'm speaking of the healthy environment because we've heard from, entities that know about the health issues that some of our constituents face. We're talking about a high-quality education that some of our students could suffer if they aren't already. So I think that's something that we also need to keep in mind.
Thank you. Councilor Brown, I saw you raise your hand earlier.
I also want to say thank you again for all the community members being present and expressing your concerns, your opinions. We definitely do not take them lightly, and it's definitely appreciated that you're taking the time out of your day to make sure that you guys are here, even all the way up to 9 o'clock. For me, there was, some of the arguments I've heard, there was some dissonance in some of the arguments that I definitely heard tonight, both for and against. But that being said, I will make my vote and I'll vote for it when the vote comes through. I will say this, regardless of what happens here tonight, citizens can take the initiative to put this on the ballot if they so choose. And so I myself understand that this has gone to the citizens already once before. And though I am a proponent of having people participate as much as they can, because there's only so many decisions you as constituents can make. A lot of the decisions are made up here by the city council. But I see myself as a trustee and not a delegate. And there's different ways of, I guess, running government. A trustee is you're being trusted by the people to make the vote, to make whatever vote that might be. And a delegate is I work directly for what the people say. And so I see myself as a trustee, trusted by the people to make the right decision. And so I'll make that decision tonight. That being said, I rest my time.
Thank you. Others? Council?
Yeah, me, I guess. So we've had a bunch of people talk tonight, and we've had people talk about the pluses and minuses. Some of the things that notes that I've taken throughout as we're talking about this, we've had several medical discussions of the medical effects. We've talked about, and how those are not good. But then again, that goes with every illicit or licit substance. We talk about alcohol, we talk about all the other substances and how bad they are. One of the things that was brought up is that that this would stop the drug dealers from doing that. And I'm sorry, but I don't see that as being very affected. I think it would maybe a couple, but the bottom line is that people are going to go where they go. They're going to get it from who they want, where they want. They may be able to, somebody brought up, they can grow it in their backyard if they want to. It's legal. And that's the whole thing is we're not talking about outlawing it or not allowing it to be used inside the city. We're talking about not benefiting from the sales of it. We talk about marijuana as, yes, I have a few experience levels under my belt, so to speak. The marijuana of yesteryear compares nothing to the marijuana of current. And as somebody brought up, some of the edibles that are out there, that was a little piece of things back then. And now it's almost the norm. And the strength that is involved is considerable, and the fact that somebody has to drive to get to it. Okay, if you want it that bad, then go get it, but just don't get it here. That's my thought. If I don't want to diminish our values by saying, yes, we as the Hermiston City Council think that these should be here. Because I don't. I think that we should not be proponents of this. I think that, again, if a member of the public or, 1,650 people in the public say that they want this here and go out, sign on the dotted line, they put it on the ballot. Okay, you bring it before us, we'll make it work because you've said so. But I don't want us to be the ones that say, yeah, we think this is a good idea. I don't want to be the person that says, yeah, that's a good idea, because I don't. That's that. I'm done.
Thank you. Others? Yeah, Councilor Myers.
I don't think that we can or should be the ones to promote this. If it is to be promoted, then a different organization can get the signatures and get it on the ballot. We have put it on the ballot before, and yes, it did go down to defeat. Now, over time, people's opinions change on this. And there is the medical, and I'm not talking about, I'm talking about real medical help for pain and like that people use that for. That's a real thing. But I don't feel we're denying that. Within a very, very short distance, you can go and get this. If that really helps you, I don't see us not having one as being a deterrent.
Thank you. Others? Councilor Brown, I want to make sure everybody else has a chance.
Yeah,
First, hold on just a
I'll
second.
go for it, sorry.
Yep. You guys, Rod?
Well, as many of you know, I've been around here quite a while now, and this is my last hurrah. So anyhow, yeah, right. Anyhow, I believe that we need to take the recommendation by our administration, who we've worked with for years and years, and take no action repealing the current ban on the sale of cannabis within the city of limits of Hermiston.
Okay. So are you making a motion? Is that what you're suggesting? Is that a yes?
I will.
Yes, okay. Councilor Linton, I saw you raise your hand.
I was sitting here thinking about everything that's been said and weighing both sides of it. Very good points were made. I've done history years ago on marijuana because they were saying it was a gateway drug a long time ago, and I found out the real reason through studying history why the government originally wanted to ban marijuana. And it had nothing to do with gateway drugs. It had to do with 3 groups of minorities that the government had wanted to get rid of. That's what it was all about. They wanted one group out of the country. They wanted the other 2 groups in prison. And they put a lot of people in prison. There are people, professionals, nurses, doctors that smoke marijuana. There are people that drink, and I don't do either one. I'm just saying, I feel that as an adult, being over 21, going into the dispensary is that's what they would have to do. Now, if there's problems right now with kids in school, not going to school because of marijuana, then there's a problem already. It has nothing to do with a dispensary in Hermiston. So like I was saying earlier, I don't know how we could solve that problem because that seems to be the problem of dealing with kids and drug use. And I know a young lady that recently passed, knew her from a little girl that I don't know where she got the drugs from what I've heard, allegedly, it was from a teenage drug dealer in school. And there's family and friends that are hurting. I couldn't even go to a service because I just couldn't take the fact that of a kid passing from, and it wasn't marijuana. I haven't heard of anybody dying from that. But just to say that it affects people, it affects families, it affects friends. And so I am a little bit ambivalent about it, but I think I know what I will do. Thank you.
Councilor Brown had his hand up again. You had a chance already to speak once, right? Yeah, okay. Councilor Brown.
I was honestly going to add a little bit to Councilor Myers was saying. But before, I mean, I really resonate to what you're saying, Councilor Linton, especially with the history. And so That being said, I really just wanted to point out a couple of things that a couple other counselors have said, especially about it being a gateway drug. And I honestly truly believe that it's more opiates and opioids that are the gateway drug and the opioid crisis that we've been seeing for the last few years. There is something in drug and alcohol treatment, and I can tell you from my experience as a drug and alcohol counselor, that is, it seems almost counterintuitive, but it's a harm reduction, which is essentially how it sounds. There's people that are trying to quit hard drugs, meth, fentanyl, heroin, and sometimes replacing it with another substance, even though it sounds counterintuitive. Obviously, we'd all like to just hope that someone's just sober. But at certain times, there are certain things that are helpful, and especially for a person to not do something that's much, much worse. I just wanted to add those a couple of points. I already feel resolute about where I'm going to vote. But thank you again, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and everybody here.
Counselor Peterson.
Now, I promised myself I was going to focus on, voters' rights and everything. That was going to be my thing. But I will say that I agree with Counselor Linton's description of the history of the cannabis ban in the first place. And as far as certain things being gateway drugs, as I mentioned previously, my father drank himself to death. He was also a very good police officer. And his gateway was me going into politics. So do with that what you will.
Counselor Drawn.
I think someone in the audience, when they made a comment, they also wanted to hear the perspective of the police chief.
Mhm.
And is it appropriate right now to ask him what his thoughts are on that?
Come on, Chief, you knew that was coming.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
So I will be a broken record again. You've heard me say it. I am appointed and not elected, and therefore I try to mind my P's and Q's. Having said that, the older I've gotten, the more libertarian I am. However, on the heels of ballot measure 110, we are experiencing livability issues that we've never seen. 59% increase in property crime since 2020. I just don't feel it's the right thing to do for the council.
Short and sweet. Yes, Counselor Drawn.
Is it appropriate to ask a representative here that works in the court system to also have some kind of input on that?
Mr. Smith. Jillian, you do not have to answer if you feel uncomfortable.
What was your question?
Basically, you deal with the court system. You know some of the things that come through for the crimes and the punishments and all of that. What has been the experience? Has there been any kind of background of the issues that you guys have seen? Has that been because of the cannabis use?
So I will say prior to this job, I worked with the drug court program, built that program for Umatilla County from the ground up, did that for 4.5 years. So my experience with that, most of the individuals I dealt with started with cannabis and then moved into meth, heroin, fentanyl, because it's not enough and they want the next thing. Moving to this side, I don't know that I can say I've seen a big impact. One thing that has surprised me is the number of minors in possession of marijuana that we see. And most of them are cited at the school or the property next to the school.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Jillian. Okay. Sorry, public comments over. Thank you. Other other comments from the council? Okay, so you had a motion. You started. Do you want to make it a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to state it again?
That based on the recommendation of our city manager, that we take no action of repealing the current ban on the sale of cannabis within the city of Hermiston.
Okay, so you're talking about option one on your
Yeah.
agenda tonight.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Counselor Harden, seconded by Counselor Primer, that we approve option one, which is the city council takes no action on repealing the current ban on the sale of cannabis within the city of Hermiston. Roll call.
Yes.
Can you state the question again? I'm sorry.
So we are acting on option one. City council takes no action on repealing the current ban on the sale of cannabis within the city of Hermiston. So a vote for yes supports that. A vote for no would be against.
Yes.
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 Yes. No.
Okay, motion passes 7-1. So it's a very strong response from the council tonight. I want to thank all of you that have participated this evening. I think it was a very deliberate action by the council. You know, this was a conversation that we started in previous conversations around revenue, but it also came back to a conversation with engaging with the community and what the community wanted to look like. And a lot of you turned out tonight. A lot of you sent in support or opposition to this conversation. And I think the community spoke tonight, and you heard the council support that as well. We have a wonderful community. We love this place. And, you know, it was evident tonight by all of you showing up. Just because it maybe didn't go the way you wanted it to go tonight doesn't mean that there aren't pathways for consideration for that. There's still initiative processes. If there's enough people out there in the community that want to stand up and put this on the ballot and actually ask the community to vote on it, there is a pathway to that. The council has just said, we are not going to be that pathway. And I'm proud of the council's action tonight. I appreciate you for your time. This is something that I kind of pushed for because I think I wanted us to make a firm action on this because we kind of talked around the edges of it and none of us had firmly committed where we were at. And so tonight you did that. And I couldn't be more proud of you for the action that you made. For me, it's about the kids. And, you know, in the end, what I do is about the kids and trying to make this the best community that we can make it for the future generations. And the message you sent tonight is, you know, cannabis may be legal in our state and there are ways for adults to get it, but it's not going to be through our community. And so I appreciate everybody's participation and the council's action tonight. And I hope this is the last time we have to talk about it for a while. Another 8 years. So thank you to the community for coming and speaking and engaging with the process. You were all very respectful. All 14 of you had great comments. And so thank you tonight for being here and helping us with this conversation. You are more than welcome to stick around to hear the other action of the council. I would imagine you probably will leave. So thank you. Drive safe.
We'll get 700 signatures by June.
All right, so we skipped over 14A.
So scary.
And we were going to do 13A, which is resolution 2318.
Yeah, they are.
I'm going to give it a second, let it clear out.
Oh, they are. And
You gotta be true to yourself.
yeah,
I can't get myself back there again.
yeah.
What's better?
All right, so we're on to resolution 2318, Gladys and Main water line replacement. Mr. Smith?
Yes, so I'll ask Mr. Morgan to
Mr.
handle
Morgan.
this.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, resolution 2318 is to award a contract for replacing mainly water mains along a couple of routes along Gladys, Main Street and Hurlburt. As mentioned, mainly water main project. It'll be replacing approximately 5,000 feet of either old and or undersized water main. For context, there's approximately 77 miles of water main throughout the city. So replacing approximately 1 mile per year puts us on a replacement rate of about every 77 years, which based on the material properties of the materials in question, that's right about a pretty good replacement schedule, actually. So our capital improvement plan is kind of getting on to system now where I think replacing about 1 mile of main per year puts us on pretty good trajectory. Along with that, I said it's mainly a water main replacement project because it also includes along that same route a 2-inch overlay curb to curb of approximately 1,000 feet of the road, as well as full street reconstruction of approximately 1,400 feet. Now, we're doing those street components because of what we learned on previous experiences. This is what I would call the West Ridgeway experience from back in, it's like 2018, 2019 timeframe. This is the vicinity of Northwest 7th and Ridgeway. That was really one of our first large scale water main replacement projects with our capital improvement plan when we started replacing water lines in that area. So that it was during the project. This is in the same vicinity. This is looking east at that same 7th and Ridgeway intersection. And you can see the disturbance to the entire roadway there. We fully rebuilt the entire width of 7th Street because of the width of the asphalt there. On Ridgeway, though, you can see where it's been disturbed and sloughed off and ultimately replaced. We ended up fully replacing about 1/3 of the roadway width in there based on, the location of the water main in the cross section of the street, curb to curb, as well as the condition of the asphalt. Additionally, what you would notice here is that curbing is pretty new right in that section. Again, depending on the location and proximity of the pipe to the curb, we experienced a lot of sloughing of the curb. So we were constantly having to go back in and rebuild curb, those types of things. And so we ended up rebuilding a lot of roadway that we were not anticipating as part of that project. This is just further east, again, down Ridgeway. Again, you can see we ended up replacing about 1/3 of the roadway. This is just looking off to the west around 6th and Ridgeway during the project. So that kind of gives you a sense of the level of impact to the adjacent properties during a project similar to this. This is again just looking west, again just looking at how much the roadway had been replaced during that project. This is what I would call the Southeast 7th Street experience. This was a sewer main replacement project. Typically, sewer mains are buried deeper than water mains, so you experience more sloughing because you're going down deeper. But this is at 7th and Hurlburt looking north. You can see where we've replaced quite a bit of the asphalt through that intersection. This is that same intersection looking south. You can see in that instance, we ended up fully replacing about half of the roadway width on that one. So now what we're left with for that section where we went through and replaced, ultimately, this asphalt isn't in the greatest condition. At some point, we're going to have to come in and do something with that road surface. Meanwhile, we'll have a brand new section of roadway right adjacent to some older roadways. So that'll cause some challenges in the future when we get to road sections there. So this project, we called it our Gladys and Main project. It's a pretty long run throughout the east side of downtown area. So on that map, everything that shows up is a blue line. That is a water main being replaced. And so beginning here, again, it's kind of the east side of the downtown area. This is the downtown core. City Hall is just off the left-hand side of the screen there. So that upper one there, that's Gladys. So starting just right over here at 3rd and Gladys, replacing water mains going out to 7th, down 7th Street to Main, replacing the water main from 6th out to 9th, and then also replacing between 6th and 7th in Hurlburt. The white and the red indicate where there will be. The white is just the 2-inch overlay surface restoration, and the red is where it'll be a full depth complete street rebuild. And then the other areas where there's neither red nor white is where we'll just be doing trenching, replacing the pipe, and then trenching back, similar to how we had done on the Ridgeway project, based on where that water main is located in the street. So just moving forward here, that yellow circle is indicating where we're going to jump to here, kind of the break point between those two sections. So this is at the intersection of Gladys and Fifth, looking off to the west. That blue line is a highly conceptual representation of where the water main is in the roadway section. You can see the water valve located there. So the water line is on the south side of the roadway. Looking to the west there, that's where we will be going in, trenching, filling back in, and then just doing a 2-inch overlay across the entire width of the roadway. Roadway is in relatively decent condition. We don't anticipate experiencing much sloughing during that project. This is in that exact same intersection, turned around looking off to the east. And so you can see a number of things just from this image. First off, you'll notice that the actual roadway itself is about 10 feet narrower. If you were to go back and look again to the west, it's wider and then it narrows up here. Part of the thing with this project, because it's such a long linear run, you're going through several different decades of development throughout the community, kind of going older to newer. And as you went through different decades and eras of development, there were different development standards. Apparently at the time that this neighborhood was developed, the street width standard was narrower. So it got narrowed up. So now the actual asphalt width may be 36 feet rather than 46 feet. And then additionally, you can notice the difference in the condition of the asphalt there. So depending on what the road base was when that section of the street was constructed, it wasn't as structurally significant when they built that. So you can see significant base failure showing up in alligator cracking along the length of that section. So this is further on down, again, more base failure. And then also you can see again, relatively conceptual where the water main is. But if we end up replacing half of that street section anyway, really all that we're saving is half of a street that's nearing failure anyway. So that's why in those sections, we're recommending full depth reconstruction. So the next thing I wanted to point out with this yellow circle there, that's the intersection of Fifth and Main. Just wanted to point this out because you may notice it or get some questions asked about it. You can see that valve can is located in the middle of that pinkish section that you've probably noticed when you're driven downtown. That's actually stamped concrete, which was an aesthetic component added in the downtown a number of decades ago. Those are challenging to work with when you're going to replace things. And so the challenge and issue that we were faced with is if we dig down to excavate that and replace it, if we replace it with concrete and try to match the existing, we'll never match that existing discoloration of the concrete that's taken place over time. So we either need to fully replace the entire sidewalk section, and then now do we replace the additional sidewalk sections on the other side? So what this project will be doing will be just simply cutting out that entire sidewalk section and replacing with asphalt, so it'll look like any other crosswalk through that vicinity. But looking off to the east there again, based off the width of this, again, Main Street used to be a state highway running through town. Roadways overall in pretty decent condition. The pipes tucked up against the north side of the roadway. So additionally, being sensitive to the business impacts of the Main Street businesses, all we're talking about for this section is just trenching and patching back for that section of Main Street. So when we put this project out to bid, we were very glad to see really tight numbers come in. That indicates to us that the scope was written very well. All the bidders knew exactly what they were bidding on, despite it being a pretty complex project. So we got 6 bids by qualified bidders coming in tightly, with Colbert Construction out of Pasco being the low bidder, about $1.85 million. Colbert Construction is the current contractor on our Southeast 9th Street water and street construction project. So we have every confidence that they're a highly qualified bidder. So we would recommend awarding the contract to Colbert Construction.
Mr. Morgan, what was the engineer's estimate?
I didn't put it up there, but I think it was just, it was
1.9.
It would have come in third. It was like right about 1.9.
1.9. Okay, so even the accepted or the recommended bid was lower than the engineer's estimate. So
Correct.
That's good. Other questions from the council? Yeah, Councilor Barone.
I just actually want to give a shout out to our city staff on this one. In one of my conversations with Councilor McDonald from Pendleton, we actually just brought up to the way that the city here does things when they're replacing a water sewer lines and replacing the entire road, and just might as well do everything while we're on it. And I know that the city of Pendleton has adopted a similar approach, so just kudos to the city for that. I did have one more thing though I did want to add. I know that we talked about the sidewalk. I don't want to sacrifice beautification. And I understand that it's the different year. Is there something maybe we could do in our urban renewal district down there to, I guess, beautify that? Maybe it doesn't have to be a part of this project, but I know it's still in the urban renewal district. Is there something that we can still do to make that look appealing?
I think for this project, that one has failed. I think that's also one where if we were to replace this one, it becomes a question of, where do you stop the scope changes? So I think if that's something that we wanted to look at, it's relatively easy enough. This is a relatively small section of asphalt that would be put in, so there wouldn't be a very large cost to taking out the asphalt and putting concrete back in if we were to want to go in and update both sides of that intersection with the stamped concrete to refresh the entire look along the entire length of Main Street. But that was part of the thought process there, was rather than kind of having a patchwork, if and when we want to come in and do those beautification components, go do those all at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we're not making a sacrifice on that aspect. So whether that's in this project or whether that's with urban renewal funding, I definitely don't want to sacrifice that. So that was just my only point on that.
I agree with Counselor Brown. I like the difference, kind of like we did with Festival Street. There's a different color connotation to the downtown. Kind of adds a little bit more beautification to the downtown corridor as well. So your suggestion would be come back later and do them all at the same time so that they all looked consistent versus just replacing this one?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, Counselor Drawn?
And how soon will the folks that would be impacted by all of this construction be notified? And what are the ways that they are going to be notified?
Yeah, so we'll be doing door knockers. We anticipate that there should be somewhere in the range of around 150 properties impacted because of the length of the run. So we also don't anticipate the project to begin until right around July 1st. So we have a couple of months. It's, sometimes these things turn around pretty quickly, where we'll award a contract and it happens within a few weeks. This work probably won't start until July 1st. So we'll do door knockers to each of the impacted residences.
Will they get letters in the mail at all, or?
We typically find that door knockers is probably the highest level of contact because oftentimes, the mailing addresses don't match the people actually living there, and if there's renters, and so typically the door knockers the most guaranteed that we reach the person that's getting impacted.
Great, thank you so much.
Other questions for council? Councilor Peterson?
If you don't mind me asking a question in regards to, I know that Colbert came in like as lowest bidder, and they're out of Pasco, correct? And then Eastern Oregon is out of LeGrand.
I'm not sure where Eastern Oregon
Yeah,
is at.
and so I just looked it up. So when we were deciding which contractor to go with, is it really only cost we're looking at, or do we take into consideration distance from Hermiston? And if they are is that at all part of it, or is it just really, are we looking at just dollars?
There's a lot that is considered, and that's mainly as to whether or not they're qualified. So they submit very large bid packages, and that's what Anderson Perry goes through to make sure that they're qualified and check all of the boxes for those things. But as long as they are a qualified bidder, then it's really just the price consideration. So one thing I will mention though, and we've talked about this a little bit before, is what we notice, and with Colbert is a good example because they're working on our Southeast 9th Street project right now. What we'll notice is a lot of times a lot of these earthwork and underground utility contractors, they may be based out of Battleground or Pasco or somewhere else. But oftentimes once they get a job in an area, they set up, and a lot of the folks they end up hiring, last year worked for whoever the other contractor was. They're really local folks that are working for these outfits. They just tend to change with whichever contractor is getting the jobs here locally. So a lot of times it's local people that are doing it. The business just may be based somewhere else.
It's a really interesting process. So, I would encourage you to sit down with Mr. Morgan and kind of look at what the qualification requirements are, because there are some very specific requirements that we put in there to make sure that they're a qualified bidder. It's kind of an interesting process to go through. Other questions? Okay, any public comment on resolution number 2318? Okay, can I get a motion to award the contract to Colbert Construction Incorporated?
So moved.
Second.
Boom. Moved by Counselor McCarthy, seconded by Counselor Primer. All right. That we award the contract to Colbert Construction Incorporated. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Okay, on to 14B now, possible action to adopt a facility naming rights policy. Mr. Smith?
Yes, so during our work session, we talked a little bit about this, and since we had a little bit of break in between, city attorney and I put together a few changes based on maybe what we thought was the most consensus around some changes. We may not have captured everything. So we emailed that to you. I'll highlight what we did. A lot of it was in that initial paragraph number 1. To just clarify, the first paragraph is about facilities and parks, what we are defining as, and the second is not facilities. So then we're clear that these other things would be handled differently. We also removed the body of water language, just in case there was, I recognize we probably aren't going to rename the Umatilla River, but
Probably not.
but we are, there are some other bodies of water around that we might rename. Or have a name for in the future. And I think those are the changes we made. Be open to making others if we need to come back or whatever, but just wanted to show you that.
Questions, council? Are the amended changes up to our requests? Feel comfortable with them?
Is this one that we're talking about?
Yeah, one. Yeah, it's one, and we're creating A and B. Before it didn't have letters. They were just 2 paragraphs.
Okay. Any council comments? Yeah, Councilor McCarthy, sorry.
Just a point of clarification. So we can either here just not do anything or make a motion to adopt and or amend this
So yeah,
idea.
your action could be adopt the amended recommendation for facility naming rights policy. Or not. Councilor Brown?
Clearly I wasn't here for that 6 o'clock meeting, but I just want to bring something up to you guys' attention. I know that earlier we had a constituent comment on, I guess, potentially making sure that there's no alcohol or like drugs, I guess, drug businesses or business that have to do with any drugs to have naming rights. I guess, what does the council feel about that, or is that already in there?
It's already in here.
Okay, perfect. Awesome, guys. Thank you.
All the names in the proposed corporations' names would have to come to us for our approval anyway. So you will always have oversight of what the naming is. Other questions, comments from the council? Yes, Councilor Lynn. Thank you.
I don't have a comment. I want to make a motion.
Hold on just a second. I want to make sure we get public comment in here.
Oh, sorry.
Right. Council, any other questions, comments? Public comment? Possible adoption or action to adopt a facility naming rights policy? Come on up.
You're going to be tired of me, but this is actually the real reason I came to the meeting.
Welcome.
Karen Jones, 1010 West Highland Avenue, Hermiston, Oregon. I just want to recognize that some of the parks are named after individuals that made really significant contributions to this community over the years. I heard Jackie, I believe, mention Belt Park, and I don't know who here remembers the Belt family other than maybe me. Dr. Belt was a physician in the early days of Hermiston, and at one time he was the only physician in this area. And I do know that He was someone who never turned a patient away. It didn't matter if you could pay. It didn't matter if you knocked on his back door, which people often did. It didn't matter if you stopped him on the street. And if he was aware that he and his wife were aware that someone needed perhaps food, nutrition things, they made sure that they were taken care of. And they made a lot of really personal sacrifices for the betterment of this community. Pastor Greenwood, an amazing individual, truly one of the best people I've ever known in my life. He certainly had an impact on me when I was a child growing up here. And I would just hate to see some of these names changed. And I understand you need to have a way to get more revenue. But instead of changing the name, maybe have Belt Park sponsored by and have the corporate name after that. And I think it would also be really a nice thing if the funds are available to have a placard with a little bit of history about why these areas are named for these people or an event that happened here. And that we should be looking, when we're naming new things, we should be looking to name them after people who did contribute over the years. And that it just shouldn't all be about more publicity for the corporations. I know we need their support, but I think we really need to embrace our heritage and celebrate the people who have really contributed to this community and has made it what it is today. Because without them, it wouldn't be the community that it is. So that's all of my comments, and I hope you'll consider it. I would even ask if you would maybe delay making a decision so that there are other people in the community who would like to talk. Because I don't think a lot of people were aware that this was on the agenda. And more people might want to comment about this. I don't know if that's possible or not, but thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Are there others? Okay. Ms. Linton.
Those were awesome comments, Karen. I think we definitely should consider that. I wanted to make a motion to table this to the next one, so we can have more time to go over it a little bit more and think on it.
Okay, then move to table this. Any second?
Second.
Been moved by Counselor Linton, seconded by Counselor Peterson, that we table this till next city council meeting. Roll call. You got a question?
Is it appropriate to ask a question before a vote? It may affect my vote.
Sure.
Do we have any input, and I'm not making my vote entirely around this, but it affects it, from the Heroes Project as far as a timeline on making a decision for the sponsor in question? I know it's only why it started up, but it's not the only reasons.
Well, I would just say they want it yesterday. So as soon as possible is all I've gotten from them.
I think they can wait.
Okay. Can we talk afterwards? So, other questions, comments? Yes.
I'm gonna say a comment, and I hope council, I know you guys have already done your homework. You've already had this presentation in front of you. I haven't. I've read the packet. And so I'm just gonna vote to table this because I haven't received all the information and had that. However, I understand that probably a majority of the councilors have. So that's how I'm gonna vote.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to table. Roll call.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
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 No. Yes.
Motion fails 5-3. So now I would take another motion.
I'd like to move that we pass this as presented
With the
amendment.
amendments that we got in our email.
Yes.
Okay, as amended in our notes in our email. Okay, it's been moved by Counselor McCarthy,
Second.
seconded by Counselor Myers, that we adopt the naming rights. What do we call this? Naming rights policy? as written and amended. Roll call.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
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 Motion passes 6-2. Counselor Brown and Counselor Linton in the opposition. Okay. Moving on to adoption of 2024 council goal setting report. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, attached to this, to the staff report, you'll see the final report produced by SSW Consulting. And, I think I've gone through it. We did some editing. I think it reflects the efforts and the work that was done on that day and a half. And so I would recommend approval.
Questions from the council? I guess the question I would have for the council is how they felt about this process this last time. Like it, didn't like it, feel like it went as smooth, we need to make changes, outcomes were okay.
I liked the music portion.
You like the music portion? All right. Anybody else have, yeah, Counselor Duran?
I thought it was a smooth process. I really like to have the input of the other directors. It's always nice to hear because they're the ones that execute a lot of the decisions that we make. So I really like how we have the opportunity to mingle. Since at these meetings, we normally don't. The interaction is amongst us and we get to hear from the public. So from that perspective, that's the part that I enjoy, is hearing also their comments. And, I think it went well, from just my humble opinion, that, we were able to speak openly and we were able to kind of weed out some of the things that we knew realistically where we stand, we couldn't, do right away, or that when we were able to prioritize the projects that we wanted to focus on, I think we all were able to be part of that discussion as well. So I like the process.
Counselor Brown?
Love the process as always. Always great, robust discussions to have with city staff and as well as counselors. The only thing I will say is the scheduling. So I just hope that this upcoming year is different and we rotate. That'll just be a lot easier, and I think just a little bit more fair to just rotate.
The dang teacher job getting in the way all the time. Isn't
I don't know. One day I'll retire.
I hope not anytime soon. We need good teachers. All right, any other comments about that? I really enjoyed the environmental scan part. We talked about historical,
Oh, yes.
talking about that and all the stuff. I mean, that map just blew up with all the accomplishments that have happened. That was amazing. Kind of walk back through there and kind of reminisce all the great things. We don't often get to look back on all the amazing things that you guys do every year and reflect historically. And so it's nice to reflect sometimes and appreciate all the good work that you guys in the staff and the city as a whole have supported. So we have any public comment on the adoption of 2024 council goal setting report? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt?
So move.
Second.
Been moved by Counselor Harden, seconded by Counselor Primer, that we adopt the 2024 council goal setting report as presented. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. All right, city committee and liaisons reports. Yes, ma'am.
Committee reports.
Yeah.
According to our parliamentary procedures common motion.
Yeah.
I want to reconsider, let me see. Wrong page, hold on a second. Resolution, ordinance number 2352 for adopting a business license fee. I want to, the members an opportunity to rescind the vote.
So your question is you would like to change a vote? What is your position?
Oh. To rescind the vote is allow members an opportunity to reverse the affirmative vote. The business license fee that we discussed and it was passed. I would like to rescind that, give the city council an opportunity to abolish that ordinance.
Okay, so we didn't actually approve a fee schedule for that, right? We just approved the fact that we would put a business license in place, and you would like to bring that back up. I'm gonna say that we're probably gonna have to have public notice for that conversation.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's an ordinance, so we'd have to go back and do,
And I don't think one counselor can just do that on their own. So
right.
what would be the action that we would have to have in order to support something like that?
We need to research that. I'm not familiar where that would be allowed
Okay,
by one
so
counselor, but we can come back with a,
yeah. It's probably unfair to drop that on us like tonight without any preparation. So can we bring that back maybe at the next city council meeting to discuss?
Yes.
Okay,
okay,
let's do that.
we'll do that.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to city committee and liaison reports. Anybody?
I didn't make it back in time from DC for Parks and Rec. So.
Okay, you got Parks and Rec?
I do.
Okay.
The bulk of our meeting was pickleball.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, two people, come and give us the whole rundown on it. And it's, they're ready to go, and they have chosen a spot that they want it to be. That's over by, Theater Sports Park.
Okay.
And they figured that the configuration can fit there the best. And then we had,
Is the Parks and Rec gonna act on something?
we will be bringing that next time.
Yeah.
We are not ready to as of yet.
Okay.
Skate Park ribbon cutting will be May the 11th. And the first Heroes tournament is this weekend.
Oh.
This Saturday.
Okay.
For the lacrosse.
So the ribbon cutting's 8 a.m. on the 11th, is that right?
To be determined still.
Okay.
Didn't know it,
May 11th is a Saturday.
but the fence has come down and we do have tentative ability to get in there.
Tentative. I saw 10 kids there earlier today, so. It's awesome. I saw some kid racing his little scooter down, what's the street right there by the post office? Orchard. He was racing his scooter down Orchard and buzzed around there and went right into the skate park, and there was probably already 7 or 8 kids in there, so it's great to see them all down there enjoying it. Any other?
Can I
Yeah.
borrow on that? I would just like maybe if Brandon could reiterate, since we have a Easter egg hunt coming up in less than a week here, kind of just the details of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Friday, March 29th will be the annual flashlight Easter egg hunt. It starts promptly at 8 o'clock and it ends promptly at 8:03. Not there, you're gonna miss out. So make sure you get there early
Funland?
at Butte Park in the
Butte Park.
field.
Yep, Butte Park, 8 p.m. Flashlight.
Flashlight.
Okay. All right. So we have 12 minutes left before the witching hour. So any other committee reports? Yes, Councilor John?
So we had a Hispanic Advisory Committee. We had a report from Stepping Stones about how many guests they see, the need for them to continue to get volunteers. And they also have some fundraising ideas. They have set some dates, Saturday, June 29th and September 21st The 21st being a gala at EOTech. The other one, I just wrote down the date. I don't know where it's gonna be held, but I'm sure that more information will be coming, and I know some of you serve on that board, so maybe you can share more information if you know it. And Cinco de Mayo the Cinco de Mayo committee is working on putting on the Cinco de Mayo event. So,
A single event
a single event,
at
yes,
EOTech.
at EOTech. Yes, that's what I know. That's what they said.
Mhm.
And then they're also considering doing something, for Hispanic Heritage Month in October, where it will also involve the community, hopefully getting some youth or anyone, that has some, artistic ability to, have some art display. They mentioned maybe asking City Hall if they could display some of the art here, or, like normally it happens on Main Street. So more information to come.
Awesome. Lily, can we get the dates of those Stepping Stones Alliance fundraisers? Other committee reports? Everything's good? Okay. Mayor's report, the only thing I will report on is CCS ribbon cutting was awesome. Great turnout. What a great facility for the Reach. Adding acute mental health facility here in our community now, where people will have bed spaces and won't have to sit in our emergency rooms to find spaces all across the state. So it's awesome. I think a lot of you were able to attend and go through the tour. It's a wonderful addition to our community. So thank you to CCS and Representative Smith for the resources and all the parties that participated in making that happen. Anything else from the council? Yes, Councilor Linton.
I would like to ask if the council would like to have a discussion with Judge Ben Dixon about the beds. A couple of meetings back, he was talking about, he had a concern about the beds for when the courts start taking up the cases here. And we never made a decision of when we would to have that discussion, so I would like to know when we're able to do that.
What?
Jail beds.
Jail beds.
Mhm.
Okay.
Where the city paid for some.
Oh, okay. Okay. So is Counselor Ben Dixon or Judge Ben Dixon, is he ever give us an update from the court perspective?
It was a few months ago, he gave us a short update, but I'd be happy to talk with him and see
Get some more information on that.
how we'd like to go forward with that.
Okay.
Comment.
Any other council reports? Yes, Councilor McCarthy.
I got to attend my first ever visit to Washington DC, attending for the National League of Cities City Congressional Conference. Boy, what a mouthful. Very valuable, learned a lot, so much that it made me feel lesser of myself how much I learned. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but there was quite a bit there to be presented, and I feel better equipped for it. I want to say also a big thank you to Lily for helping me navigate that and pointing me out that I was actually flying into the wrong airport, since I'd never been to the East Coast before, so that was very valuable. And the other thing I want to say is that we will, in this building, on the 4th of April, be having a candidates forum hosted by the Chamber, interviewing and asking questions of mayoral candidates, county commissioner candidates, and our state senate candidates here at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
On the 4th.
Others? Councilor Linton, you have another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I went to the meeting too, because it's so late. I had a good 5-10 minute speech. But if you want to see everything that we did, I brought it here, and I was going to give, but it's too late. My brain's tired. But I'll share if you want to know.
Yep. Thank you, Councilor Linton and Councilor McCarthy and Mr. Smith for all attending and representing Hermiston and Oregon in general. Another great congressional cities conference. If you haven't been, it's definitely something you should go. And the more you learn, the less you know, right? So I mean, it's just part of life, and so you just now know more. And so there's lots of opportunities for you to participate and represent your city. Any other council reports? No youth advisors tonight? Yes.
I'd love to reclaim the last 6 minutes of this council meeting.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that to
We're
you.
getting it.
But also attended the Reach facility, really great facility. If you haven't been there, a lot of unique things set up to make that facility the facility that it is. So I'd encourage you guys to check it out. And that's all I got.
Cool. Everybody? Mr. Smith?
Just a quick warning, the 4th Street restriping is going to take place starting Wednesday. I would avoid that area Wednesday. There'll be lots of traffic detours, rerouting as they restripe and get that ready for traffic again. Yeah, the left turn lanes and everything.
Okay.
So-
And Second Street, when's that supposed to be done?
2nd Street.
The gateway,
Oh, Clint, what?
90 days. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're moving quick.
And they jumped right on it as soon as, like Mark said, sometimes the contractors are ready right then. Sometimes they have a little while.
Anything else? All right, we are adjourned under time.